All right, here we are. It's happy hour number 37, and I know we're a couple minutes late, but we're disorganized as fuck as always. So we made it. Hey, we're live. Greetings, everyone. It's the Drinker here, and tonight we are going to be talking about Conan the Barbarian. Truly one of the greatest movies of the 1980s and possibly ever. Definitely one of the best of Arnold Schwarzenegger's career. And I wanted to talk about this movie tonight with a guy who really knows about it and who's kind of a Conan expert. So who better to talk to than Andre from Midnight's Edge, because you really know your stuff when it comes to Conan, as far as I'm aware. You've done like big, long videos about the history of the series and how it all came about. So thank you for joining me to do this tonight, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. Conan the Barbarian is probably my favorite fictitious character of all time, and his author Robert E. Howard is also probably my favorite writer of all time. So yeah, this is a topic that I know a little bit about, and I'm very, very happy to share all across the interwebs in our retrospectives and other Conan videos. I find that Conan the Barbarian, both the movie and the character, is a character that's very misunderstood, because the image of Arnold Schwarzenegger has very much so usurped the original character. And that is something that I'm very, very happy to address and dispel some myths and just go into debate what a great movie the 1982 movie really is, even though it's not that great a Conan movie.
Yeah, I mean, I've not really read the books, but I am kind of familiar with like the literary version of Conan, and he's much more of a, I'm not going to say philosopher, but he is much more articulate than the Conan you get in the movies, isn't he? Like he's quite thoughtful about a lot of things.
Yes.
And that's something, I guess, that you don't get with the Arnold Schwarzenegger version. He's very much a man of few words and in some ways few thoughts. But, but it's kind of what makes him so likable, I think, in the movie.
Yeah. I see here in the comments, Tim Hans says written by Oliver Stone.
Yeah,
yes,
wow.
And that is a truth with some modification. And it actually has a lot to do with how Conan in the movie is a man of very few words and limited thoughts compared to the Conan of the books. Because Oliver Stone, he wrote the first draft of what ended up the movie. However, that was a draft that was based on the original books. It was based on the comics a little bit, and it was based on a ton of cocaine and LSD and other, stuff like that helps writers along. So that draft was pretty incredible, and Conan was very different in it. But they didn't go with that script. When John Milius came aboard as director, he took that script and he used that as a starting point, but then he trimmed it down considerably and he reshaped it into his own image and to his vision. And also by that time, he knew that he would be working with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He had no say in that matter. Schwarzenegger was the first person that came aboard. So Milius, he took a meeting with Schwarzenegger and decided, okay, this guy, he's charming as hell, can barely speak English, can't act to save his life. So I'm going to have to work with that. So I'm going to have to write this as a very quiet character, and I'm going to let everyone else carry the story. Well, he's mostly along for the ride. And that's a choice that Milius did specifically because Schwarzenegger was the lead.
I think it works, honestly, because this is one of the things that I was going to talk about like later, but like since we brought it up now, one of the things I love about this film is that it's actually quite dialogue light. There's an awful lot of like, there'll be long stretches where nobody's really saying anything, and one scene kind of leads into the other, and it's done through narrative. It's done through like just the progression of scenes, so that you kind of get a sense of what's going on, but the film doesn't need to explain it to you, and it doesn't have to have characters commenting on everything that's happening. Like there's one point where the three mains, like Arnold and Valeria and Sabotai, are going into Thulsa Doom's lair, and there's a big orgy going on, and they're going through this like butcher's shop where like human corpses have been strung up, and they're being made into like a stew for everyone.
Yeah, they're eating the humans like good snakes they are.
Yes, but if this had been done today, they all would have stopped and be like, "Oh my God, they're eating people! I can't believe this!" And then they would have made some gag about it or something like that. But they just walk right past. You get to see it. The characters don't need to comment on it. You experience it and move on, and that's perfect. That's how a movie like this should be, and I think it works great.
There's two things about that which I think are really fantastic. One is that the characters, they come from a world that's a shithole. So like, yeah, okay, fine. Here we have people eating other people. We don't have time to worry about this because this world is such a hellhole anyway. So this is just par for the course. This is just one more cult and the weird things that they do. Seeing all that before, because that's what the Hyperion Age is like. That's one thing. The other is John Milius, the director, does not treat the audience as idiots. As you say, this is a movie that is told through the narrative. You can follow the story, but to really get the movie, you have to pay attention to it, and it's so much more rewarding that way. And again, it's because John Milius made a movie for an adult thinking audience.
Oh, it's definitely for adults, that's for sure, man.
Yeah.
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, but also it's like it works on two levels. One, you have the action on screen, which is pleasing to everyone, but at the same time, you have like the philosophical aspect to it, and I think that is why this movie stands out in a genre that's filled with too many movies, most of which are forgotten. But this is the one that stands out, and it's like the philosophical undercurrents, which I think is a big part of the reason why.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot that's addressed when it comes to that, particularly when it comes to the riddle of steel, which again is something we can touch on when we talk a bit more about the movie. I just wanted to put this super chat up here because I love it. It's like, what is best in life? Drinking 10-year-old single malt and listening to the drinker talking about Conan.
Yeah, that is pretty high up there. Absolutely.
That line, that famous line, obviously from Arnold about the lamentation of their women.
Yes,
that was actually Arnold's very first line of dialogue in the film. That's the bit he performed first. That's the bit they shot first, and so they heard him say that, and obviously it came out in his thick Austrian accent. And I think that was part of the reason when they realized, oh right, that's what we're working with here. We're gonna have to dial back this guy's dialogue.
Yeah, no, actually, they knew that already. But it's funny you mentioned that because there's another fun story with that. Because John Milius, he knew long before the movie was ever filmed that I'm gonna have to write this to give this guy as little dialogue as possible, and what little dialogue I give him has to be memorable. And one other person that was really unhappy about the casting of Arnold Schwarzenegger was the producer of the movie, Dino De Laurentiis. He wasn't happy about Arnold at all. Yeah, and there's a funny story for how the two they really disliked each other, the two, Arnold and him, and there's a story for why, and we can get into that later. But just suffice to say that because of their first meeting, which did not go down great, Dino De Laurentiis, he really had it in for Arnold, and he really wanted to fire him. So he wanted to come and visit the set, as was his right, as the producer, possibly looking for a way to like go and throw his weight around or something like that. And then Milius cleverly organized for that to happen. I said, like the first scene that was filmed, because that was like the time when if needs be, Dino De Laurentiis could fire Arnold and replace him with his preferred runner-up. So it was like the day when they filmed the scene with the legendary quote, "Crush your enemy, see them driven before you." And Milius chose that quote because he knew it was going to sound really badass with that Austrian accent. So he made sure that Dino De Laurentiis was there as that scene was spoken. And then Dino was like, I'll put my personal opinions aside. You are Conan. And then he was like, okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing. Like, much as his accent's very thick and stuff, like, his actual delivery is great. And, you know, not having much experience with the books, like, it's just really hard for me to move past Arnold's portrayal of Conan. It's just so iconic.
Exactly.
You know, and I think it gives you a hint of the kind of star that he was going to become, you know, because as much as it's easy to mock him for his kind of monotone voice and stuff, he's got the charisma and he's got the screen presence in spades, and you can see the sort of prototype of what he was ultimately going to become as an action hero. Like some people, they've just got that ability to hold the screen and really hold your attention, and he's got that somehow, despite all his acting limitations and despite the accent and stuff like that. He's just got it, and you can see why he was one of the biggest stars of the 80s. He came along at exactly the right time. You know, this big, massive dude at a time when, you know, the 80s were just gathering force and like you were starting to get these kind of macho action movies. He was just the perfect guy to come along and start doing this stuff. I mean, I have heard that like he, you know, bless him, he worked hard to try and tone his accent down. He worked with voice coaches, he worked with acting coaches. He would rehearse each scene or each line of dialogue that he had to do like 30 or 40 times, like really went at it to give the best he could do. So you can't really fault his work ethic on this one. Like he took the movie seriously. And again, like I think it comes through. It's not a performance that's going to win any Oscars, that's for sure. But I think it's all right for Arnold. Like he can actually convey a fair bit of emotion just with his gruff sort of facial expressions as Conan. I think it does work well.
Absolutely, because here's like the thing, but Arnold, he was the right person at the right time, because there was like a time for bodybuilders and action heroes, and he was just there for that. But at the same time, there is something more to Arnold. He has like this really unique charm that is really, really rare. Some people have it, and I think that those people are the ones that really stand out in history one way or the other. In some sense, he has that thing going for him that the literary Conan had in the books. He had like that same kind of charm and magnetism. Same thing that you have like other people, conquerors in history, have also had like that. They have like this something in their personality that makes them stand out. And at the same time,
it's charisma.
And at the same time, he's an incredibly hard worker. Yeah. I read his autobiography, and what is clear there is that when there's something that he wants, he goes absolutely all in on it, 100%. He did it with bodybuilding, and that combined with the right set of genes led him to become the single greatest bodybuilder of all time. And when he decided to learn English, when he had the opportunity, he did so pretty quickly. When he wanted to master business, he did that too really quickly. Like he's just set about and do absolutely everything he wanted. And same thing with acting. When he decided that this is something I want to do, this is what I want to do next, then he also went for that with the strategy and everything in mind, knowing exactly what he was going to do, how he was going to do it, and working really, really hard at it. And yeah, that included practicing every single line many, many times over to try to limit his accent as much as possible. Although I can personally certify that there's only so much that can be done in that regard.
It's quite obvious as well. Like it doesn't happen so much later in the movie, but you can tell by the way the sound is that they had to overdub some of his dialogue again. Like I guess the original take it was fine from an acting point of view. It just wasn't great from the point of view of accents, and so you can really tell, like, oh yeah, they had to get him to ADR some of his lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they did what they did, and it's he's obviously not the first or the last bodybuilder who transitioned into acting. Like, it was quite popular in the 60s and 70s, where you'd have these big guys who would go in and do like sword and sandal kind of epics. They were usually quite low budget, and none of them really took off in the way that Arnold's career did. But he just had that something extra, something special that just made him stand out. And yeah, you see bits of it in this film. You really see the start of that career. And yeah, when we were talking there about how this movie was very much designed for adults, you get that right from the first scene of the film, where you get the quote by Nietzsche about that which does not kill you makes you stronger, and then you get the like the big epic music swells up, and you see the sword getting forged. Like, right away, it's made clear to you this is a serious movie. This isn't just some goofy, sorcery fantasy film. This is something you're meant to take seriously, and it works great right off the bat. And yeah, I like all those scenes of like the swords getting made and stuff. His father's sword that's going to be such an important part of the story later on. All of that stuff really cool. The bit that really pisses me off actually is the first proper scene of the movie, where it's Conan and his dad sitting there talking to each other about the riddle of steel, because this is quite an effects light movie. Like, most of it's done with practical effects. And there's only a few little bits where there's like a demon bit where they're trying to like fight over Conan. And there's like a little bit of special effects with like a witch that turns into a ball of fire or something. But generally it's all done through practical effects and like false perspectives and all that stuff. And so it looks really good. But that first little bit where him and his dad are sitting together, they're very obviously against a green screen.
Yeah,
and it's just
or a
sky.
matte painting.
Yeah, and it's just sky behind them. And for the life of me, I don't know why. It's like, couldn't you have just put them in a forest somewhere with hills or sky in the background and just shot the scene? Like, I don't know why you just had to do that. It's really weird.
Probably because during their film that there were no suitable locations near the filming location. I think it's as simple as that. The movie was filmed in Spain, and exactly where it was filmed is relatively flat. They'd have to go to a mountainous terrain. They'd have to go to the Alps, and that would just add so much more money to the budget that it would simply be cheaper to do it with like green screen and a matte painting. I agree completely. Like, the movie would have been better for it if they had taken that week extra to organize a trip to the Alps, which geographically weren't that far away, but you'd have to like book a hotel, helicopter, all like it would have added so much more money to the production that Dino De Laurentiis wasn't interested in adding. So yeah, it is what it is.
It's a shame, but well, never mind. So, I mean, yeah, I like the whole sequence because, in a lot of ways, this is a film that really takes its time. It's not a short movie, but it's an epic movie, and every bit that you get really adds to this whole story of Conan's life. You get to see this little moment of peace in his life where he's with his father, and he talks to him about the riddle of steel and how you can't trust anyone in the world apart from your sword, because that's the one thing that will never let you down. So it's all very cool stuff, and that's when his village gets raided and destroyed by Thulsa Doom and his guys. His father gets killed in front of him. His mother gets beheaded, which is a really cool scene. I like how that's shot. Actually,
that's a stunning film scene. If I just may, Stud Supreme says in the comments, "No, Andre, they filmed near some mountains, some locations that Milius used for the wind and the line." And yeah, that's true. Of course, there were mountains nearby, but they were the wrong kind of mountains. It wasn't the kind of landscape that Milius wanted in those particular mountains. And getting the kind of mountains that he wanted would have cost more than Dino De Laurentiis was willing to part with. But yeah, sorry, Drinker, carry on.
Yeah. I was just going to say that scene where his mother gets killed in front of him. It's very it's very poignantly shot because I love how Thulsa Doom kind of mesmerizes her. There's just a very long scene of her looking at him and him staring back at her. And like you just watch her slowly lower the sword, and it's clear that he's got the ability to just hypnotize people. And then he just lops her head straight off. And it's not done in a gruesome, gory sort of way. You just see her fall away from Conan, and like she lets go of his hand, and that's it.
All the more horrifying for it, because that way the scene is actually all the more impactful, specifically because you don't see the gore. You just see like just off screen there, the head came down and the mother is falling away, and young Conan is like left with his arm raised, like in shock almost. So like the scene is all the more effective for it. Also, that's something cool that has to be addressed there with Thulsa Doom, because that's one of the characters that was there in Oliver Stone's original script, but he went through quite a few changes in John Milius' rewrite. Because what John Milius did was that he combined Thulsa Doom, which is a character not from the original Conan stories, but from the King Kull stories by the same author. And if you look at Skeletor, that's what Thulsa Doom actually looks like, and that is
really?
He also, yeah. He's a skull-faced necromancer. Like, for instance, if you want to do Thulsa Doom right on screen, look to the 1987 He-Man movie with Dolph Lundgren and look at Skeletor in that. That's a perfect representation of Thulsa Doom.
I'm not going to lie, man. I think I prefer James Earl Jones. Fantastic actor. Obviously he's best known for his voice talents, but like actually he's a great actor on screen. He doesn't obviously have the size and the physique of someone like Arnold, but he's got the screen presence, and he absolutely can go toe to toe with Arnold just in terms of dominating the screen. It's great to see them together.
Absolutely. This was the other thing that Milius did, because not only did the script had like the more Skeletor-like Thulsa Doom, it also had the Snake Men, which are a recurring trait in both Kull stories and Conan stories. And he merged the two of them together so that Thulsa Doom then became this snake god sect leader person who can transform into snakes. And at the same time, you saw he gave them these green contact lenses and this wig of really straight hair.
Yes,
that doesn't really fit with the complexion of his skin. You kind of like can tell that something isn't right here. And the meaning was then to show that Thulsa Doom comes from an ancient race of people, of which he is the last one.
Yeah,
so that's kind of what was implied there.
Yeah, I mean, he's got these blue sort of glimmering eyes as well, which again must have been contacts or something for James Earl Jones. But again, it adds to that otherworldly look about him.
Exactly.
I just love this as well. Masters of the Universe from 1987 was great. Fucking Skeletor in that movie was fantastic, man.
Yeah, Skeletor was awesome. I mean, that's like the irony that's the best Thulsa Doom we've ever had on screen. If you want to that's literary, or that's true to the literary Thulsa Doom. Look no further than the Masters of the Universe movie.
Because the actor who did it, I can't for the life
Frank Langella.
Frank Langella, yes. Like he's a great actor, and fuck, man, he really went for it in that film. Like he properly threw himself into the role, and it's great.
Yeah, to shoot scenery in a way that scenery has seldom been shot before.
It's always funny when you see properly good actors in absolutely terrible movies. I'm always reminded of Raul Julia from the Street Fighter movie. Again, like a really competent dramatic actor playing like a total cartoonish character, but still taking it really seriously.
Yeah, well, he didn't have so much to lose at that point. So, yeah.
That's true. But yeah, I mean, I love the, because this is all about just setting the scene for Conan and showing you how everything is taken from him. He becomes a slave. He's put on the wheel of pain for the next 20 years, and he's just pushing this wheel around. And you get that great transition as he slowly becomes more muscular and huge from this backbreaking physical labor. And I just love how all the other people just slowly disappear, and it's just him pushing this thing by himself.
Yeah. The last man standing. Also, another great detail there is that as he is kidnapped, you see that among the captors, there's this redhead little kid, this little ginger kid who is there.
Yes.
And that kid is going to stay there in the background, and he's the one that eventually sympathizes with him and lets him go free. So that's like another, like one of those subtle things which are there that Milius expects you to notice, but that's never spelled out. There's one thing I do have to spell out, though, and that is how the fans of the literary Conan, and you can also include the comic book Conan in with that, their feelings on this movie is very, very mixed. Like many people will see it as a great movie. I certainly do, but not a great Conan movie. And just this thing right here, the whole slavery aspect, that is the reason why. That is something that never ever happened to the literary Conan or to the comic book Conan, which, depending on the run, is pretty much the same as the literary Conan. He was never ever enslaved. And that is something that fundamentally breaks the character and means that the character portrayed by Conan is a radically different character from the one that is later in, or the one that's always been in the books, the comics, what have you not. Because the title of the movie is misleading. This Conan, if you want to be technical, he's not a barbarian. Schwarzenegger's Conan was never a barbarian. He's a freed slave. He's a product of civilization. Whereas the literary Conan, he was never enslaved. He grew up in the wilderness. He was never schooled, so he learned to fight everything like fighting the elements and everything like that. Whereas this Conan, as we are later told by Mako, he was made dull and he lost his will to live. And then later he learned to fight in a dojo, and he learned from books and stuff like that. I mean, this is a 180 shift from the original Conan.
Yeah, I can definitely sympathize with people who are fans of the book version of Conan. I think when it comes to telling a kind of complete, dramatically satisfying story in this film, I think it works in the context of it because he's very much portrayed as a guy who's lost everything in his life because of Thulsa Doom. You know, he loses his family, his people, they're all slaughtered, he becomes a slave. You know, he's broken down to like there's basically nothing left of him, and then he gradually builds himself back up into this, you know, this huge hulking warrior. He becomes a pit fighter. He learns to fight. He's eventually freed. He has to make his own way in the world, and that's when he sets out on his path of revenge. And even that costs him everything. You know, it kills him at one point. He loses Valeria. You know, all of this stuff, he has to sacrifice everything that he cares about to get to Thulsa Doom and finally kill him. So yeah, I mean, possibly not a great adaptation of Conan, but a great satisfying story for a character to go through.
Exactly. It's a great, great movie. And the story is amazing. And this is what's so impressive with the movie, because you just hit on it. How he loses everything, but it doesn't break him. And this goes right back to the introduction, and with the sword being forged, and with the quote by Nietzsche in the very beginning of the movie, because that's like the philosophical underpinning, which makes it a great movie. But it's an invention of John Milius, and it never happened in the Conan stories, the original ones. There he's just an adventurer who basically goes south to explore the world, look for trouble.
I see. Yeah, because I was going to say that when it comes to the sword forging scene, you know, swords are forged out of like fire and destruction. You know, this molten steel that has to be hammered into the shape that you want it, and ultimately it becomes this strong, powerful weapon. I guess that's what they're showing with Arnold, or with Conan. That's
exactly what it is, because there you see that to wield that perfect weapon, first it has to survive the process of being molded, which is fire. It is ice. It is being hammered. It is being beaten out. It's being burned again many, many times over. And through that process of heating cooling down, beating up, all of those things. That is how the sword becomes a weapon, how it becomes, if you will, unbreakable, which isn't exactly true, but still, where the theme goes, it is that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah. There's a great bit of information here as well. I knew about this from the Anime Slayer. Arnie lost about 30 pounds from the role from his Olympia win. So when he was preparing for this movie, obviously he was doing a lot of training to get back in shape. And he'd not been bodybuilding for about 4 or 5 years, I think. It'd been quite a while since he'd retired from the bodybuilding world. But he apparently got in such good shape for this movie that he decided, fuck it, I'll just compete at the 1980 Mr. Olympia. And so he did, and he won. So he was essentially still in bodybuilding shape when he did this movie. Apparently, it was a bit of a controversial win, though, because people reckon he was basically given it because he was like a big star by this point rather than the best competitor. I still think he looked pretty fucking awesome. If you see the pictures, like, man, he was still in incredible shape.
Oh yeah, he never stopped working out. So he was always in a size where he could compete in most things. What he did though was just before the shoot, and he actually did change his workout routine to lose a lot of definition. Not so much mass, but he lost a fair bit of definition. And the reason for that was actually an instruction that was given to him by John Milius, because John Milius didn't want him to have a body that could only come from the gym.
Yeah.
He wanted him to have like a more rugged, less toned, less defined. So so for most of the movie, he's wearing clothes. He's reasonably covered up, and there's like very few shots of him flexing. This actually then changed for the sequel, Conan the Destroyer, because that was directed by Richard Fleischer. And he had the opposite approach. He said, well, since we have you, we want to show you. We want to show every little bit of definition. So for that movie is when he got back into Mr. Olympia shape one more time. And most of the epic images of Arnold as Conan, including the one in your thumbnail I saw someone give you flack for, are actually from Conan the Destroyer, and not from Conan the Barbarian for that.
Yeah, I was looking at that. I was like, that looks suspiciously like from Conan the Destroyer because he's a lot leaner there. I was like, fuck it just looks really good, so I'm going to put that one in.
I think it's fine, because just face it, most of the iconic images of Schwarzenegger as Conan are actually from Conan the Destroyer, because of Fleischer's decision that we really want to have you look like a proper barbarian in here. We want to have you look like the comic book version.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense, because like if he had been, Conan the Destroyer is very cartoonish in even more ways than Conan the Barbarian. And Arnold being in like super ripped, like competition shape is just part of that. That movie had a lot of problems, and I think the PG-13 rating really dragged it down. Like,
oh yeah,
it should have been another R-rated movie with lots
of
violence.
We can get into. I can give you the full story of exactly what happened there, but we can get back into that later. We can after we finished up Barbarian, we can have like a brief discussion on what went wrong there. But the rating is a big one. It really is.
I love this one as well. Sven Thorsen for the win. Sven Thorsen was one of Arnold's buddies that he brought over to play Thorgrim. Huge guy, like pretty successful bodybuilder in his own right, and I think he was a power lifter as well, or a strongman at least. Massive dude, and he ended up being in loads of Arnold Schwarzenegger movies.
Oh yeah, he's in almost all of them. Like, it really helps being a friend of Arnold and a bodybuilder.
Because he brought Franco Columbu in as well, who's
yeah.
One of his best mates. He just has a small role right at the beginning during the attack on the village, but you see him like perched on a rock kind of thing. And yeah, it was cool. Like he was like obviously thinking, fuck it, like we're going to need a bunch of muscular guys here for this movie. I know a bunch of them. I'll bring them in.
Because that's like the challenge. Because Franco Columbu, he's one of the greatest bodybuilders ever in his weight range. Like if you see him next to Schwarzenegger,
he's tiny.
Clearly
he's like
Exactly. He doesn't pose any kind of threat. Whereas Sven Ole Thorsen, he's one of those who is bigger than Arnold in sheer size and bulk. So he looks like someone who actually can pose a threat to him. So whenever they need someone that looks like they can actually give Arnold a run for his money in hand-to-hand combat, like Sven Ole Thorsen is one of the go-to guys in every movie that he's in.
Yeah.
So yeah, what happened in which was it where you had like the guy from Mad Max fighting? Was it Commando?
Oh yeah, Commando.
Yeah,
yeah, that guy's not going to be taking on Arnold anytime. Yeah, it's like Az and I, when we did our Commando review, we were laughing our asses off at that. Just like Arnold, like peak Arnold, who's absolutely enormous, just this mountain of muscle, versus like a podgy middle-aged man in like a chainmail vest. It's not really a fair fight.
Yeah, no, not really.
Oh man, but never mind. Yeah, he does his best. Does Bennett? You gotta love him. Yeah, what was the other thing I was going to say about this? Yeah, because of Arnold's sheer like size, they couldn't get any stuntmen for him, so he ended up doing pretty much all the stunts and the fight scenes himself. And it was the same with Sandal Bergman, and I probably just butchered her name there, but the girl that played Valeria.
Yeah, no, that's her, Sandal Bergman.
Oh, I got it right. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's 6 foot tall. And so there's not an awful lot of actresses or stunt women who are 6 feet tall and statuesque like she is, and they couldn't find one, so they were just like, fuck it, you're just going to have to do your fight scenes as well. And she actually got injured a couple of times doing it, so... You know,
both she and Arnold did. I mean, she almost lost a finger. Like the last joint of a finger almost got chopped off her in a sword fight.
Yeah,
and Arnold got like close, like that scene where he's like running towards like the huge rock running from the wolves, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they actually caught him in one take there. So
yeah, I've heard about that. One of the dogs got him. Shit, man. Because the funny thing about Arnold, God bless him, like he's obviously like in incredible shape for this film, but he's not a runner. Like if you ever see him running in films, he is not fast. Like he's got this kind of like loping kind of way about him, and I can see how he wasn't able to outrun the dogs. But yeah, I mean,
to be fair, most people can't outrun a big dog that's coming for you. But
yeah, that's true. That's true. I love all that sequence though, because the whole gist, I guess, is that when he's done on the Wheel of Pain and it's transformed him into like true ultimate form Arnold, he's taken off to be a pit fighter. Like it's like they've just decided, right, you're big and strong now, it's time to do some fighting. I think that's when you get the patented Arnold grunts whenever he's getting attacked, like
that's exactly where it's from.
Yeah, they're great.
Which is fantastic. Also, with him being chased by the dog scene, there's like another like really fun thing that I appreciate with John Milius, which only goes to show what a great but at the same time subtle director he was, and how you have to like pay attention to the movie, which is like the dogs they chase him, and then he falls into like this what looks to be like a burial mound, and then the corpse where he found like this sword doesn't come alive, unlike what happened in the books and the comics based on them. But he gets the sword though, and then in the next scene you see like, oh, he's going back to the dogs. You don't see what happens, but then suddenly he has like the dog furs. So he has a new set of clothing.
Yeah.
Which is like another really cool subtle thing there. So then you know what happened to those dogs.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, because you just see them like he comes out with his sword and the dog almost gives him a look like, oh shit, about to get real. I love that whole sequence because there's no real explanation for where any of that stuff comes from. That tomb that he finds, it's just pure random chance. He stumbles across it. This guy it's in his hour of need. He's got nothing. He's been cast away, and he's on the run for his life. He's got no weapons, and he just falls into this tomb that's probably lain undiscovered for centuries. And he finds the sword, and it feels like a properly epic scene. And I just love when he hammers it against the ground to knock the rust off it. It's all just really, it feels very, I don't know, it just got that epic feel to it, like it was meant to be, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, it's such a great movie from a filmmaking point of view because of all those subtle things. Like it's so easy to miss if you weren't aware, and that's like one of the things that I actually worry about is people watching the movie now for the first time, accustomed to modern day filmmaking where everything has to be pointed out and explained in detail.
Yeah.
And then if they watch something like this, I think they might not even get the movie. They might like wonder, what the hell is this slow thing? Without getting any of the subtle things which are communicated visually.
Again, like, you know, a scene like that, it's all played seriously in the movie. You know, he falls into the tomb, he looks around and he sees the skeletons and the great king on his throne with his armor and the sword sitting there, and it's all very serious and it's all very poignant and meaningful and everything. But like, again, like you say, if it was done today, they would probably feel the need to put some goofy joke in there to make light of it. Like, wasn't it lucky I found this place? Or something. Yeah, or like, hey, man, how are you doing in here? It's been a while, hasn't it? Or something stupid like that, like just to try and make a joke out of it, and it would just completely undermine the scene. But they knew back then when they made movies, you've got to play it serious because this is a serious moment.
Yeah.
So it's played like that. I love as well when he meets the witch, and again, the movie doesn't really make it clear whether he he sought her out or he just happened to stumble across her. But like, she's shifty right from the moment he sees her. Like, she's really, she stood at the doorway of her hut and she's like, "There's fire and warmth in here, barbarian." Like, I would have a bit of a question about whether I should go in there, but he just heads in.
Yeah, well, he probably figures that it's chilly outside, as you can tell from him having to bring, needing the dog fur in the first place. And who the hell knows where the next house is going to be, and what kind of madman is going to be in that one. Yes, his sword, so he might as well.
There you go. There's my alcohol. I'm drinking that at the moment. It's really good.
Yeah. And while addressing comments, I saw someone asking if we've seen the Barbarian Brothers, because that's the second best sword and sorcery movie. I agree. It only starred the Barbarian Brothers. The movie is called The Barbarians. And I think that second to Conan the Barbarian, that is the second best sword and sorcery movie. I can't recommend that one highly enough. But yes.
The witch is thirsty. She's, I don't know much about the actress, but like, she's got the look that she was like a 1980s porn star. I don't know what she did beyond this film, but she's just got that look about her. Like, they hired her for a reason.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the actress, but Europe in the early 80s. I mean, there was no shortage of actresses from shall we say, colorful backgrounds. So yeah,
absolutely. She's good though. Yeah, I love how she throws a smoke bomb on the fire and just it blows up for no reason. She just does it to freak him out, and then they shag, and that's when she turns into like a monster, and he has to throw her into the fire and all that stuff. It's all good stuff, man. But it gives him enough information. The Thulsa Doom, the two snakes, together, because he remembers it from when his parents were killed, and he's on his revenge trip, So she tells him the city he has to go to, and that's when he heads off there. So it gives him the next step in his quest, and I think that's when he meets Sabatai as well, who's like the thief who's going to be his accomplice throughout most of the movie. And I really like this guy. I think he's cool.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that he wasn't really an actor per se. The actor, and I use the term lightly, playing Subutai, he was actually a friend of director John Milius, because Milius was an avid surfer. And so was this guy. So he's been in a few movies, but first and foremost, he was like a surfer and And the guy that Milius decided, he's just what I need for this particular role. Jerry Lopez was his name. He was a champion surfer, and he had played himself in Milius' earlier movie Big Wednesday, which was like a surfer movie. And that was it. But again, Milius knew this guy has exactly what I want. And if I was going to hire someone else, I would be thinking of him and trying to find someone with his qualities. Let's just go with him. Yeah. And it worked. It was just the right kind of character.
Yeah, I think they had to dub over most of his dialogue, though. It's a different guy who voiced him, but he's good enough on screen. He's kind of just a solid backup for Conan most of the time. He's able to get him out of a few scrapes. He's a great archer. He's a great thief, and he becomes like kind of a good ally for him. They just basically hook up. Like Conan goes out the hut and he's there. He's like been chained up, I guess, by the witch or something. And he's like, I guess you can come with me then. That's it. They're friends after that. Nice and easy.
Yeah, that was easy. It's like, I don't care what you did. Like, it's a shitty world we're in, so people will lock you up for any reason. And if anyone knows that, it's Conan himself.
Yeah, very much. And I love how they go to a city for the first time, and it's Conan's first taste of civilization, and so he's just like eating it. He's always eating stuff. Like he's just picking up random shit and eating it. And he's sampling everything because I guess he's never tried it before. And I love that line from Sabotage when he's like, chew slowly. It's the good stuff.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, indeed.
Black Lotus, the best.
And that's also something that's very much like Conan, the original books and everything. Because John Milius, he never read the original Conan stories. He never read the comics. He wasn't interested. The only thing that he used as a starting point was John Milius scripts. So anything that is there of the original Conan stories, or however derived, is by way of it was also there in the John Milius script. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those things, how it's like, here is civilization is wicked and corrupt. You've never seen that before. That's actually one of the most Conan things, and then I mean literary Conan things in the whole movie. Because the central theme of the original Conan stories is the conflict between civilization and barbarism. And by barbarism, you can substitute the noble savage.
Yes.
In a way, yeah. And,
like civilization's almost like decadent and
exactly, and that is the point that's made here, and that we see like later. But at the same time, it's treated like very, very much like this whole world is such a shitty thing that no one bats an eye at anything. It's like, oh, the woman I just slept with turned out to be a crazy witch, and I had to kill her. All right, whatever.
Yeah, it's like, these things happen, We've all had nights out like that, man.
Yeah.
I love when he punches the camel as well, because there's no need for it. He just bumps into it, and like his first instinct to just swing for it and knock it the fuck out. Not many guys can say they've knocked out a camel, but he has. Yeah. And I'm sure, right, I could be wrong about this one, but there's a bit where they're walking past a stable, and there's like a bunch of llamas or something in there. And you just hear a guy going like, inside it. And Conan goes like, can you believe that? And I just thought, shit, man, is there a dude in there fucking a llama?
Well, that would be the implication, wouldn't it?
This movie's wild. I love it.
but again, you see, those are like the things in the background, like how wicked civilization is. And he's like, well, can you believe what these crazy people are doing? Like, he's seen some weird shit already, but like, now he's in a city, so obviously he's going to be confronted with some weird shit that he hasn't seen before.
Yeah.
In addition to the Black Lotus.
The Black Lotus, yeah. Someone spit in chat, it's like no camels were harmed except for the one that got obviously knocked the fuck out.
Yeah, apart from that one. It would be nice if they were like honest and said like, no animals were harmed apart from that one. He died.
Yeah. We hurt that one big time. Yeah, I think the consensus in chat is that there was a guy boinking a llama. I mean, any port in a storm, man.
Yeah. Again, one
Uh,
of those brilliant, subtle things that Milius put in there.
yeah, absolutely. And that's when they run into Valeria for the first time, because they're going to try and infiltrate one of the snake towers that's there, where Conan recognizes the standard of the snake, and he's like, I've got to get in there and find out what's going on. And that's where she's there. And damn, what a great character she is. She's one of the prototype strong female characters that we hear so much about nowadays, but we never really see.
Yeah, that never
she
existed
absolutely
before.
Was. Yeah.
But we are told never existed before. But yeah, there she is. And
she's great because she's never obnoxious. She's never portrayed as being better than everyone else. She's just a great fighter and tenacious. She's competent at what she does. They picked a great actress as well, because Sandal Bergman was a dancer. I think she came from a dancing background.
Yeah.
And so when she's like leaping over walls and stuff like that, she actually looks graceful. She looks like she can do it easily. And I guess she can,
believe she can, absolutely. And yeah, that's also like the thing, because in that world that we're seeing there on screen, there's not going to be like any, you can't do this, you're just a woman. It's like, okay, if you're doing what we do, if you're obviously a thief, then obviously you must be able to do this the same level as we do. So you're the same as us.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie is strangely egalitarian and progressive in this way. There's not a hint of anything more. It's more like, yeah, you're a thief just like us.
Yeah, I think they're very much willing to. Yeah, they're willing to work with her because it's for their mutual gain. And Conan's like, I don't give a shit whether you're a man or a woman. If you can watch my back, or if you can fight alongside us and help us out here, you're on board. And that's enough.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's a mutually beneficial transaction for all involved.
Yeah, very much. And you get to learn more about her as the story progresses, and you kind of get some of her backstory, that she's been lonely her whole life and all that stuff. And it's all good stuff that makes her interesting. And ultimately, she's willing to sacrifice everything to save Conan. So. Yeah, a great character that can actually fight and looks tough and can do things. It's who knew they could do this in 1982.
Yeah, and what's even cooler is that the character was written in 1930.
Yes, yeah, because there was a Valeria character in the Conan, but was she not a redhead in the?
No. Valeria was always blonde. Conan had several women, and there were many really strong female characters in the original Conan stories. Valeria was in the Conan story Red Nails, which many consider to be one of the best Conan stories ever written. And she was always blonde, so that's one way to tell the more prominent of Conan's various. Not all of them were mistresses, but equal fighters then. And Valeria was one of the more notable ones. However, they took some of the scene, for instance, the scene of her coming back from death. That was from another of Conan's women. The pirate queen Bailit is the one that did that in the stories. No, the redhead one was. I don't think that Conan actually did that in the original or encountered a redhead in the original stories that I can recall.
Maybe it's just me. I'm so used to redheads getting removed.
Yeah. For instance, Red Sonja, which was race but to become black.
Yeah, God. I like this one as well from Volcanicus Rex. Sandal Bergman's Valeria was better than Kevin Smith's Tila. No fucking argument here, man. I'd love to see her go up in a fight against Tila.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Valeria was also likable.
She absolutely was, yeah. Yeah, she very much was likable.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's cool. I love the bit where she just leaps off the tower when they're making their escape, and she's just like, yeah, you want to live forever? And just leaps up, and you can hear her laughing as she falls. She's just absolutely doesn't give a shit. It's great.
Exactly.
But I do like the bit where they go into that's the tower, and it's like a big temple where they're worshipping the snake, and Conan has to fight it, and it's very obviously an animatronic snake, but they're smart enough to do very quick cuts to and from it, so you don't see too much of it. And I think that's to its credit. It makes it look as lifelike as they possibly could, I suppose, with what they had to work with.
Given that the Titanoboa has been extinct a few million years, that was probably the best thing they could do. Of course, you probably could have got like a real life huge anaconda, but again, that wouldn't be like safe for Arnold or anything. So that was like the best that they could do. And also, what's cool is that scene is almost exactly from one of the Frank Frazetta paintings, where Conan is chained up and still expected to fight a huge snake. That cover is one of the reasons why John Milius took on the movie in the first place, because he didn't care about the books themselves, but he loved their covers, and he wanted a movie that looked like the Frazetta's artwork. And with that scene, that obviously happened.
Yeah. I like the whole scene. I love you see Valeria like sneak up behind a priestess, because they're all busy worshiping. They're about to like do a human sacrifice to the snake, and then you cut to the next scene, and she's just dressed in that priestess's robes. Like, and they didn't have to show her like knock the girl out and steal her stuff, but she's just there and ready to go. It's cool.
Yeah.
Again, it's just little things with this movie where it doesn't need to show you everything. It doesn't need to spell things out to you. It's enough for you to surmise what's happened. It's good. And you get they kill the snake, lop its head off. The poor girl dives into the pit and like breaks her legs, I guess. And you just see her lying on the floor next to this like dead headless snake.
So she's screwed in any event. In the private chat, Drinker, I just put a link to that picture if you want to bring it up on screen. This is one of the pictures that inspired the movie in the first place, as in it's inspired John Milius to take it on.
All right, hold on. I'll see if I can bring it up. I never remember how to share images on this. So, where you go to share. No, it's not a video file. See if I can put something in here. Let's see if anything will come up here. And I can only share videos, unfortunately. From what I'm seeing, unless I'm missing something here.
Well, let's see if you click
hold on.
Because
yeah. There we go. So there's the that's that.
That's
I'm gonna get rid of that comment as well.
One of the pictures of Frank Frazetta that inspired
Milius
to take on the movie. And you see that is like that scene is basically then, like it was a similar scene in one of the original Conan stories. So there you have the inspiration behind it.
Nice. I like that. This they managed to escape from this tower with the big jewel that they've been looking for, and I think that's enough to buy them quite a bit of wealth and success for a while, because you get that great quote, like you see Conan and Valeria and everyone partying and like they're spending all this money and just like drinking their way through each day.
By the way, is Schwarzenegger's absolute best scene, when he is the single most believable in the entire movie, in my opinion. The drunken stupor. They are apprehended and arrested. That's like the scene that I buy the most.
Wait, is that when he passes out in his bowl of soup?
Exactly.
But you get the voiceover explaining what's going on, and it's a really good quote where he says, "Success can be as trying as the most difficult adversary." Almost saying like, when you get too much success and too much luxury, you almost just burn out, and that's what Conan's doing, because he's never had it before in his life.
Yeah. I mean, he became a newly rich, didn't he? Like there in that moment, he was rich. And what does he do? Like every other new rich, well, he goes and burns the money instantly and crashes instantly afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's what becomes of him. But that's when they're brought before King Osric,
The
this
great
old man.
Max von Sydow.
Max von Sydow, yeah, excellent Swedish actor who, well done to them for getting him in this movie. They did well to get him. But yeah, and he explains that his daughter's been kidnapped by Thulsa Doom's cult, and he wants her back, and he wants them to go and get her. So, he's willing to pay whatever. He's going to give them all the jewels and all the wealth they could ever ask for. But
Very
Valeria,
classic mythological setup. I mean, how many? I mean, certainly in Norse tradition, and like old Norwegian and Scandinavian fairy tales, like half of quests are started that way, by the king asking the hero to go on a quest to save his daughter, and the reward is typically the daughter and half the kingdom.
yeah. It's interesting what he says as well, where he explains, there comes a time when the gold and the jewels, they lose their luster, and your throne room becomes a prison for you, and all that matters in your life is the love of a father for his child. And it's almost like that realization of just all his wealth and power doesn't really mean anything. Like, he's at that stage of his life where he just wants his children around him, he wants his family. And maybe it's hinting that that's going to happen to Conan one day as well. So I think it's a good performance from Max, and it really kind of sets the stage for what's going to happen next, where Conan goes off without Valeria because she doesn't want to do it. She's just like, we can leave it all behind and just live our lives and be happy. And he's like, no, I want revenge. And it leads into a great scene, actually, because he heads off and he finds like all these pilgrims who are going to join Thulsa Doom's cult. And he decides he wants to get the priest's robes so that he can get right to the front of the line. And so you get that priest, that very slimy guy who approaches him, like saying, oh, you're so big and so well made, brother. You shouldn't be afraid to hide your body, clearly hinting. And then Arnold's just like, could we go talk over there? And that's when he just lays the guy out. It's great.
Yeah, it was like, that's also a scene that never ever would have been allowed today in any way, shape, or form.
No way. It's great.
So yeah, no, it's also a scene where John Milius was able to express both what he felt about hippies. You see, like those people that you have to keep in mind, this movie was made like in the early 80s and the 70s, and Woodstock and all that.
Oh, they are 100% hippies. Yeah, like all the flowers and
was a
everything.
very, very recent memory, and Milius hated those people. He couldn't stand them.
Yeah.
So that was like one of his contributions to the script was, let's bring some hippies in here that to talk about peace, love, and understanding, and let's make one of them gay, and then let's have Conan hand him some peace, love, and understanding.
It's like, how can we make this movie better? It's like, let's kill some gay hippies.
So it was like, that was Milius injecting his feelings into the movie. As I always say, it's good to share your feelings. That's what Milius did there.
Yeah,
feelings that would have gotten him cancelled a million times over today, but at the time it was great.
The great thing is this movie will always exist, so we can always enjoy it. But I love how he uses like the snake cult's pendant thing that he stole from the temple to get to the front of this line. He's just showing it to all the guards, and it always reminds me of that bit from Wayne's World where they've got the backstage passes and they're just like showing them to everyone, like, backstage pass, can't stop me, I can get through here. Not thinking like maybe that's going to raise some suspicions, like maybe he's not doing the right thing, and like you just see the guard that he shows it to like head off to report it to someone, and you think, shit, he's busted here.
Yeah.
But that's Conan's mentality. Like, he doesn't really think things through that carefully.
You know what it reminded me of as well, when he's like showing it off to everyone, like, give me passage. Reminded me of The Fifth Element with Lulu going around with like multipass.
Multipass.
Yeah. Also not at all conspicuous, and she also like she blended in so perfectly with like her orange bright hair and everything like that. And here you also then have Conan, big burly fellow who does not fit in with the rest of the hippies in any way, shape, or form, then showing off his multi-pass. Of course, it's going to be bound to raise suspicion.
Yeah.
And yeah, and again, that's more of the subtle filmmaking. You see like the guy running off, like, I better report this. So,
Yeah. It's like clearly like what he's shown is not what you're meant to show to get to that place, but he's not really thinking about that. He's just like, oh yeah, this will get me through, no problem. And then I can just get up there and kill Thulsa Doom. Not even like considering the fact that there's thousands of his followers all around him. Like even if he did get to him, like he would obviously get murdered straight away anyway. But again, Conan doesn't give a shit.
Strategic planning isn't this Conan's strong suit.
No, very much. And so, yeah, straight away he does get busted. As soon as Thulsa Doom appears, like Rexor and Thorgrim get him, and they put him on the Tree of Woe, which is great. Contemplate this on the Tree of Woe, and so he's been crucified. And I just love how even then he destroys some vultures that are trying to peck at him. He's like, fuck you, I can eat you. But you get a great scene with him and Thulsa Doom where they're talking about the riddle of steel, which is like obviously the underpinning of Conan's life.
Yes.
And that's when Thulsa Doom gives his perspective on it, that steel isn't strong, flesh is stronger. And he has the girl jump off a cliff and she smashes right through the platform that they're standing on. And that's his demonstration of like the power of will and the power of flesh to control the world around you. And it's quite an interesting perspective, actually.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And the disturbing thing about it is that it kind of implies that Conan's father, he's not waiting for him in Valhalla. Krom laughed at him because if Thulsa Doom is right, then Conan's father was wrong. And so was Conan's father. So yeah, what happened with him? I mean, these are statements that should fundamentally shake up everything that young Conan took for granted.
I think
he's just being told that everything he was raised to believe may be wrong, or at least not quite as he thought.
Yeah, and I think the movie doesn't make any conclusions about which one's right. They're both just different perspectives on life. And obviously, Thulsa Doom's entire power is derived from his ability to manipulate people and get them to do what he wants, to corrupt flesh and minds. And so he's naturally going to see the world in terms of that. The army of people that do my bidding, they are more powerful than any sword from his point of view. He sees people as they're just like weapons. He can use them in the same way. He can get people to just throw themselves off cliffs because they're blindly following him. That's how he sees things. And so that's like quite an interesting perspective from him.
Yeah. And by contrast, Conan's father was a blacksmith. Mm-hmm. He was someone that forged swords. So that is his point in life. And he was the one forging that sword in the beginning. And now we're told that, things might be actually very, very different from that. But so, yeah, you see they're coming from two very different places. And so they have two very different interpretations.
Yeah. And so the whole, Conan's whole experience on the Tree of Woe, he's crucified and basically he dies. Like, I'm pretty sure he just dies from malnutrition and his friends save him, or they get to him, but too late. So it's Valeria who demands that, the wizard, who I don't think I've mentioned him actually, Mako.
Yeah, we forgot about him.
Yeah, he's just this mad old bastard, like living out in the middle of nowhere. And I love how he threatens Conan. He's like, "I'll put you into the deepest fiery pit of hell," and then Conan just laughs his ass off.
Yeah, he recognizes a con man when he sees him.
Yeah, definitely. But he's able to use his power to bring Conan back to life at the cost of Valeria. She's almost been I guess, cursed. He says that the gods will take a heavy price for bringing him back. And it's not just they have to fight off the demons that try to come for Conan in the middle of the night. It's that she's ultimately going to get killed, which she does.
That's like the thing, because she makes the sacrifice. She says that anything, I'm willing to pay any price. And although there's like no god or demon or anything that states to her, this is the price, she consents. And so events unfold, which basically lead to her having to give up her life, and Conan losing even more than he already had lost in his life of sorrow and misery, as the magician Mako pointed out as the chronicler of Conan.
It's enough to bring Conan back to life, and there's almost like an implication that he's been changed by all of this. Like, he's not quite the man he was, because you see him like doing his sword practicing, and he keeps like looking at his hand, like he's still getting used to like being in a physical body again, and it's all like a bit strange for him. And they're planning to go back to Thulsa Doom's lair to rescue the princess that's been kidnapped. And they keep saying to him, it's not about revenge. That's not why we're there. Remember that. And he's just sitting there sharpening his sword. Like, his face is like stone, and it's almost implying that he's lost something, like, while he's been gone, and he's not quite who he was before. He's just purely about revenge at this point.
Yeah. And he wants it more now than ever, to the point of being, shall we say, less than charitable with his god.
Yeah, Krom. Yeah. And so when they go back this time, you get this great sequence of Thulsa Doom changing into a snake, which, again, none of it was CGI. It was all done with like plaster casts of his face.
Those effects are pretty amazing, I have to say.
Yeah. Because it's all seamless. Like, it cuts very quickly between James Earl Jones's real face and then a model they've done of him, and I guess there's something inside it that starts to elongate it and turns it slowly into a snake, and it's this really weird, unsettling effect, but it's done incredibly well for a movie made in 1982. Like, it's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, it really, really is. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah. And yeah, you get a great fight scene as well between Conan and the two henchmen, like Rexor and Thorgrim.
And a brutal one. I mean, that fight scene was brutal today, and it was brutal at the time.
Yeah. I love Thorgrim with his big warhammer, just like shattering pillars and stuff where he's swinging at him. Again, he's not the brightest either, but man, he's a hell of a presence. Like, that dude is enormous. But yeah, it's enough for them to escape. They manage to get the princess that they're looking for and get the hell out of there. But Valeria gets shot with an arrow from Doom, and it's enough to kill her. So yeah, it kind of. That was the price that she had to pay, I guess, for bringing Conan back.
Yeah, win some and lose some, and if the gods or whatever deities intervene there, give a life, they evidently take one in return. And this is also something that is a little bit from the original stories, like elements of it is from Queen of the Black Coast. And that is a story in which Conan spent 2 years traveling alongside Bêlit, who was then the Queen of the Black Coast, an even more fierce warrior than Valeria. And she dies towards the end of that story, but her ghost comes back to help Conan at the very last moment when he needs it the most. And that's kind of like also what we see Valeria do in this movie, because like there's one moment when Conan does not have the upper hand, and then he is given help from beyond in the shape of Valeria. Or did he? Was he hallucinating? We don't really know. But that's where that is from. That is straight from one of the original stories.
I was going to say as well, I do like the bit where they're fighting their way out of that underground pit, and there's two guards that are standing in Valeria's way, and she almost just like relaxes a little bit because she knows she can take them easily, and she's like slapping her sword against the palm of her hand, like, come on, which one's going to come first at me? I love that, like just showing a little bit of sass there. She's pretty fucking cool as a character.
Yeah.
And man, yeah, it's kind of a weird bit as well, like the fact that there's this big orgy scene going on and they're eating other humans. You know, it's almost like, so that's what becomes of all these like eager young people who join the cult. It's like, yeah, they get turned into food for the rest of them.
Yeah, that's what you get for being a blind follower. That is your reward. Yep. You may think that you have some awesome stuff coming your way, but no, your chef recommends on the menu.
Hippies are all cannibals. You heard it here.
Yeah. Well, that is if you are male. That is, I think for the women there's a different fate in mind, but the men that they don't necessarily need for that, they go straight into the stew.
Yeah, man, there's so many topless women in this movie as well. I'm calling it. It's great. It's great to see. You could tell it was made in the 80s. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Again, it wouldn't be allowed now. You know.
It was allowed in 2011 though, because you can say plenty bad things about the 2011 Conan movie, and I'm going to do a whole retrospective ripping into that. But it did have that thing going for it, so that's something that, or at least it could be done 10 years ago. Who the hell knows about today? But 10 years ago, it should be done.
That's the thing. If it had been made after 2015, it wouldn't have happened. I don't think. But yeah, I like how this all sets up the big final battle where Thulsa Doom's men go after Conan. And basically you've got two guys standing their ground against 40 or 50 men on horseback, and just fighting for their absolute lives. And you do get a pretty decent speech from Conan there, actually, where he's talking about no one's going to remember them or why they were fighting there, or even like how they lived and died. All that's going to matter is that they stood their ground. And you know, he's saying to Krom, you know, if you won't listen to me, then to hell with you. That's a great final line from Conan. He's like, "Fuck you, Krom. You've never helped me."
Yeah, and the irony is that that's also something that kind of like irked fans of the original stories the wrong way. It's a great speech. It really, really is. But you know what happens if you pray to Krom for anything in the original stories? As per like the literary Conan's belief system, Krom does one thing for you. In this sense, Krom's actually a good god. He gives you your courage when you are born, and he breathes courage into you. And after that, you can do whatever you want with it. You can live or die, doesn't matter, he doesn't care. The only thing he cares about is you don't get to disturb him. So if you dare to pray at him or ask him of anything else, he's going to send doom your way for being a praying little wuss.
I love that. That's the best kind of god.
That is
like you're ready for the pain.
Yeah. So that is the god that the literary Conan believes in. It's like you don't pray to Krom, because Krom, he's not going to help you. He's just there in the background. He doesn't care if you live or die. So don't bother asking even. So this is then another like breach between the movie and the and the original stories, because Conan would never ask Krom for anything. He'd say to hell with you, Krom, or hell, he'd do that, but he'd do that anyway without it being in conjunction with any kind of prayer.
This is a very true statement as well. If made today, Lashana Lynch would probably play Conan. Yep. And she would be the bestest Conan ever. Yeah. But yeah, I like this whole fight scene. And yeah, you get this epic contest between Conan and Rexor and Thorgrim. You know, Thorgrim gets speared on a trap that Conan set for him, just like slices him in half almost. And then Rexor comes in, and that's when Valeria comes back from. She's in the form of like a Valkyrie now, isn't she? She saves Conan's life.
That's the Valkyrie form. That's something that John Milius put in there because he loves Vikings, and one of his motivations for doing the movie was that he wanted to do a Viking samurai movie. So there's samurai influences in there, and there's some Viking influences in there. And Valeria coming back as a Valkyrie was very much so one of those Viking influences that he put in there.
Yeah, it's a real mix. And, you know, as much as we talk about how important diversity is nowadays, like, this is a movie that really had a diverse cast when you think about it. You know, the three leads, you've got a guy, you've got a woman, and you've got like an East Asian man as your three main, you know, protagonists. You've got a black man as your antagonist. You know, it's a decent mix of people and a decent mix of cultures and mythologies all thrown together in this fantasy setting. It makes for a great, interesting, rich world. You know,
Yeah.
but it never throws it in your face or anything. It's just there. That's the world that you accept as part of Conan.
Exactly, and that's always been part of Conan. If you go back to the original stories, what's fundamentally the story? Well, it's this northern barbarian who is from Chimeria or Cimmeria, some people call it. I personally disagree with that. And where is that? Well, it's like in landmass that is right now under the oceans between Scotland and Norway. And he's kind of like proto-Celt. That's what he was imagined as. So he's like fairly far up north. And the original stories, they're basically Conan the adventurer going, discovering the world, looking for trouble, and selling his sword as a mercenary, basically, going through different places, looking for trouble everywhere.
Yeah.
In all kinds of varied locations with different kind of peoples and everything. So like those stories were really diverse naturally because he goes and travels the world.
Yeah. I love that line from Sabotage as well when Conan's cremating Valeria's body and he's crying and Mako's asking him, why are you doing this? And he gives that great speech about how he is Conan, Sumerian, he will not cry, so I cry for him.
Yeah.
You know, and again, it works in the context of the movie. Like, again, it would probably be laughed off if it was made in a film today, but it's played seriously, and it works pretty good. I like it.
And Mako was the right actor to pull that line off. I mean, such a line is all about delivery. If you have the wrong actor in the wrong context say it, it's going to fall so flat on his face that words can't even describe it. But when within the context of that movie and with Mako's delivery, worked perfectly.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And so, yeah, I love the fight between him and Rexor as well because it's not fancy. It's not got like really technical swordplay. It's just these big, massive, fucking strong guys like hacking away at each other and just trying to pummel each other into submission. And I think that's how sword fights play out a lot of the time. It's not about huge amounts of technical skill. It's just overpowering your opponent through sheer brute force. And that's what Conan does. He just hacks this guy into the ground, basically. You know, there's blood like pouring out of the dude. And like, I love when he finally topples like a fucking oak tree. And like, even then, like you see the shot of him, of Conan, and like you just see blood kind of spurt up into the air. It's great. Yeah. But he shatters the sword as well, which I guess is kind of important.
It is very important. It goes right to the philosophical underpinnings of the movie. And this is why this is such a great movie. And you have this philosophical theme going throughout it. And it all has to do with the riddle of steel and the ultimate solution to it. Because it does have one correct solution. It is never spelled out in the movie. Conan has to figure it out. And the audience also have to figure it out. And the sword breaking is a key to that.
Yeah. It's Conan letting go of both of these philosophies. You know, with the sheer power of his fucking body, he shatters his own father's sword, and he shatters that belief that steel is the only thing you can trust. And then ultimately in the movie, he takes out Thulsa Doom as well. He kills him with his father's sword.
With his broken father's swords.
Yeah,
That's
but
like the important thing, because Thulsa Doom was all about, my flesh is so mighty, well, and mightier than the sword. Yeah, well, even if that sword was broken, it was no match. It had no trouble going through his flesh.
Yeah, and it's showing then that Conan is kind of freed from both of these beliefs. The power of steel and the power of flesh, both of them have proven no match for each other, and they're no match for Conan. And he's almost risen above both of them. And so he's now free by the end of the movie to find his own path in life.
Exactly. And also to for himself find what he thinks is the correct solution to the riddle of steel. And that is the same solution that Milius wants the audience to find, with the clues that have been given throughout the movie. And that goes right back to the quote in the beginning, the Nietzsche quote about what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah,
that's like the undertoning feel. And it's so what's your take on what the ultimate answer is before I spill it?
What, in terms of what's the answer to the riddle of steel?
Yeah, what's the answer to the riddle of steel and to the movie, the message that Milius, or one of the messages that Milius wants to put out there?
It's that adversity is what forges a real man. It's what allows you to become the person that you really should be in life. It's trial and hardship, and ultimately rising above it all.
Exactly. It's the will to rise above it all, because that's like the thing. You can make it through anything as long as you have the will to grit your teeth and grin and bear it. And that's ultimately the answer. Flesh may be stronger and steel may be stronger, but strongest of all is will, the will to persevere, which is stronger than both of them. And that's kind of like the message that Milius wants to get through in the with the philosophical undertone of the movie. And just that theme going throughout, coming back at key intervals in the movie, in the storytelling, is what lifts this movie above so many others, both of the similar category and others.
I think for a long time it was so easy for people to look down on it as just like this dumb, violent, barbarian hacking away at people. But there's like a lot going on in the subtext of this story, and it does come through if you know what to look for. And there's a real serious undertone to this movie I think it's really interesting. It touches upon some great ideas that make for some great almost philosophical discussions about what gets you through life and what's important and what allows you to succeed. I mean, look at what we've been able to draw from it just when we're talking here about it.
Exactly, and that's why it's such a great movie, and the message is so true. And you can even draw parallels to his own life. I mean, what was it that made him go from a shithole in Austria to literally the king of the world, suddenly the king of California, and conquering every single arena? It was will. It was the will to persevere and to be the best at everything. So that's one of the reasons why this movie resonated so strongly with him, and why he still is waving his sword around every chance he gets in politics and what have you not.
Yeah.
And also why the movie is so great, because there's just the way that story is told. However, as you point out, it is told in such a subtle way that it's very easy to miss unless one is looking for it. If one just thinks that this is another stupid 80s actioner, and you view it with those eyes, and you're not accustomed to looking for subtext and looking for what's the story behind the story, it is unfortunately a movie that is very easy to dismiss.
Yeah. You know what I love about that scene as well, when he takes up both his father's broken sword and his own one, and he does that thing where he crosses them over in front of them, just like he did when he was a pit fighter for so many years, and he does it right in the shadow of Valeria's tomb. there's an awful lot of symbolism in that one scene, that one shot, that pretty much epitomizes everything that's going on in Conan's mind at that point. You know, bringing together the past and the present and letting go of all of it to become something else, to ascend to that higher level.
Exactly.
You know, that is some fucking good filmmaking right there.
Yeah, it's one of the greatest films of all time, if you ask me. And it's for just those things. It is for those subtle things where, without words, so much is communicated just through the medium of film, just through the use of imagery. You convey everything that in words cannot be spoken.
Yeah,
I mean, just that one scene. I suppose you'd have to write a book just to bring out in words what that one scene does in visuals.
yeah. And it's great. Like, so it doesn't take long. But it tells you so much in that one moment. And that's Conan overcome all of his weaknesses and his hang-ups and his flaws, and that is him then ready to finally confront Thulsa Doom in the way that he's never been able to throughout the whole movie. And he obviously, you know, Doom tries to kill the princess that they've got, because they've basically got her as bait. She's like chained to a giant pillar. He tries to shoot her with an arrow. Sabotai does the whole no with his shield and comes in and saves her. But Conan's then able to use her to get into Doom's lair. You know, she distracts the guards so that he can kill them and make his way to Doom, just as he's you know, he's given one of his great speeches in front of his legions of followers, and it's just a big sea of flames out in front of him because they've all got torches that they're holding. Again, you know, very reminiscent of you know, a certain political party that was popular in Germany in the 30s and 40s. You know, the kind of mass rallies that they would hold where they were all having their torches and everything.
Yeah. Absolutely. And also the funny thing, well, not funny, but the thing about that is that it shows in a really understated way, well, what happens to the followers when their leader, the one that holds their entire belief system together, is suddenly dispatched right in front of their eyes in a way that it shouldn't be possible. I mean, what's going to happen to those people? We mentioned the princess. And she was a true believer. But now what? Her belief system has been shattered. I think that Valeria, who was the actress playing the princess, she also did like great in that. Like, you see like that also like subtle and like, oh shit, this wasn't in the script. Like, now what do I do? Like, this is not what she had expected.
Well, yeah, her lord, like, she almost had him as this father figure that she adored. He tried to murder her, and so that, I think, that moment is what shattered her belief in him. And then she was perfectly willing to help Conan out after that. And again, I love that scene where Conan approaches Doom from behind, and he's up on his big podium, and he just turns around and sees him, and he tries to mesmerize Conan just like he did his mother when he was a boy. And there's a moment where Conan almost looks like he's going to fall under his spell. You know, he looks like he's going to lower his sword, and the same thing's going to happen to him. And then it just, you know, he snaps out of it and he hacks this guy down with his father's broken sword that Doom stole from him. Again, what great symbolism, and what a great complete narrative for that character to be using that same weapon against him. It's great to watch. And it just slices his fucking head right off. That's great.
And at the same time, it's like enough time to savor the moment. So you actually get to see Thulsa's shock, like, oh shit, he actually did it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because Doom, you know, he gives him a speech about how he's basically given him all his motivation. And Conan without him would be nothing, you know, and he calls him his son. And yeah, I just love how Conan has that little moment of doubt where you think, oh shit, he's fallen under his spell. He's realized that this guy is the father figure that he needed his whole life. And then it's like, no, fuck you.
Yeah,
And you get the proper spurt of blood coming out of him. It's great.
exactly. Yeah, well, if you were my father, I was better off without deadbeat. That's kind of like what's
Yeah.
going through his head there. Because you see, like, it's obviously an attempt at manipulation crossed over with hypnosis. This is obviously something that Thulsa has done a million times before, but this time it didn't work.
Yeah. Because Conan has risen above that now. He's got that strength of character to resist it.
Exactly.
And yeah, and like you said, what do these people do when their leader is destroyed in front of them? This guy that was like a godlike figure to them that they couldn't imagine ever be infallible. He's just brutally hacked to pieces right before their eyes. It just breaks the spell. And so they throw away their torches into this pool of water, one by one, and just file away. And that's it. Like the whole thing just sputters out, because without him driving them on, there was nothing.
Yeah, so they just go back despondent. And another thing that we have to address here is the music, which is also a character in the movie practically. I mean, how is this not among the greatest film scores of all time? I'd certainly put it in a top 5 of all scores of all time. Few musical themes and movie scores just so perfectly captures not only the philosophical undercurrents, but also on-screen action in such a classic and timeless way as Basil Poledouris's score for Conan the Barbarian.
Because he did some epic scores back in the day, didn't he? A lot of 80s movies. I remember he did the score for Hunt for Red October as well, which I fucking loved. Like, that was awesome.
Yeah, or the score for RoboCop, also another of the all-time greats. I mean, in many ways, the score is better than the movie has any right to have it.
Yeah, it elevates the whole movie, and again, it helps you to get that sense of like, this is a serious film. It's not hokey. It's not something you're meant to take lightly. It's a serious, epic story, and the music absolutely reflects that.
Yeah, indeed it does. So, one of the greatest scores of all time.
Yeah, and what a great ending! You see Conan. He destroys this temple that Doom had built, and walks off kind of into the sunset with his princess that he's got now. And you get to see that final moment of him on the throne as old Conan, with, again, the music in the background. Again, just telling you, like, there's going to be a hell of a lot more with this guy. And yeah, what an epic, brilliantly told story. I just loved it. Like, honestly, I had such a blast watching this movie again.
What's your history with the movie, if I may ask? Like, when did you see it for the first time? At what point did you realize what kind of great movie it really is?
I mean, I legit can't remember how I got into it. I think it would just be when I was a kid. It was on TV, and my dad and I watched it because we used to watch all these kind of movies together, because we only had like one TV in the house. Like, that was what you get. That's what you had.
As all of us had growing up. It took a while before we got more.
Yeah, I watched some great movies with him, and it was a nice kind of experience, but a bit weird at times if it's something like Conan where there's a hell of a lot of sex scenes in it, and you're like, oh shit, I feel awkward now. But never mind. And so yeah, as a kid, I didn't quite appreciate all this sort of subtext to it, and it was more just like, oh, this is a really cool violent movie of people like hacking each other apart and all that stuff. And as you get older, you start to see more in it. And then, when we agreed to do this, particularly rewatching it now from a bit of a more analytical sort of point of view, because I knew I wanted to make notes so we could talk about stuff, I was just like, over and over, I just kept thinking, God damn, this is smart. This is really well written. I really love how it's paced, how it's constructed. It's just great. Like, just an absolute pleasure of a film to watch. And I came away from it absolutely buzzing. And so, yeah, like, I don't remember how I first got into it. It was just probably one of those random films that you see on TV, and then you kind of remember it.
Yeah. But there was so much more to this than most other movies from back in the day, and I really believe that this is really one of those that stand out as one of the greats of the year 1982. Great year for movies, anyway, but especially for this one. And in terms of sword and sorcery, it's the best one ever made, and I also think it's may even be one of the best Schwarzenegger movies, depending on what you choose to look for. But in terms of like containing philosophical undertones and all of that, I don't think that Schwarzenegger has been in a more profound movie than this one.
No, I would tend to agree. Like in terms of my favorite Schwarzenegger movies, like my holy trinity has always been Conan, The Terminator, and Predator. Like I consider those the best films he's done. I know people, rightly say Terminator 2 is a better movie than the first one, but like the first one was just so fucking iconic that I'd probably put it slightly above it
Yeah,
as
no,
my
I
favorite.
tend to agree. There wouldn't be a Terminator 2 without Terminator 1. And I'd insist on saying that there has to be like four, so you can bring in Total Recall as well.
Yeah, yeah, I could go with that. Yeah, Total Recall was a good movie, and a lot smarter than people give it credit for. Like it was one of those great early Paul Verhoeven movies where it's really subversive, and there's kind of more going on there than you initially think. So yeah, I would give that one a go to.
Yeah,
It's a shame with Arnold because really from like the mid 90s his career kind of petered out. But everyone kind of has their day, I suppose.
yeah. Well, he was the right person at the right time in the 80s. He was the personification of the 80s action hero. But in the 90s, it was a different era.
Yeah.
It was like a whole new political regime. It was a whole new kind of action hero. And all of the 80s action heroes, they kind of disappeared. So, like his movie, The Last Action Hero, the title was strangely prophetic in a way because the time of the 80s action hero in many ways was already over by the time that came out.
Yeah.
What's a shame, though, is that we never got like the promised sequels.
Yeah, I mean, Conan the Destroyer was like a trimmed down PG version of the original, and it really suffered from it. I would have loved to have seen an R-rated sequel to Conan, and then probably a third movie just to round it out.
Yeah,
To tell that final story of him becoming King Conan, when Arnold would have been still young enough to do it. And I can understand his desire to move away from the Conan movies and not get typecast as just sword and sorcery stuff. But then when you think about him, he did all those shitty Terminator movies over the years, which he absolutely shouldn't have done, rather than another Conan movie. And that's a real shame.
the problem is that he actually had plenty opportunity to do a third and a fourth and a fifth Conan movie if he had wanted to. But when he had the opportunity, he was the one who didn't want to do it. He didn't really get a desire to do a Conan movie again until after his political career was over. And then he wanted to do like his comeback with the Terminator, sorry, with the Conan movie.
Mm.
Problem was that by that time, the those that otherwise would have funded it were no longer interested, which is why he never got it off the ground. In terms of Destroyer, yeah, you're completely right. It's the rating. And the people responsible for that is actually Universal. The bean counters at Universal, because they looked at the numbers for Conan the Barbarian, and that movie was a success. It was the second biggest movie that Universal put out in 1982. The problem was that the biggest movie that Universal put out in 1982 was E.T. And E.T. was rated PG. And so
Mm.
the bean counters at Universal found out that or in their wisdom, they calculated that if Conan only had been rated PG instead of R, it probably would have earned 30% more. So then it was distributor Universal that gave the mandate to film producer Dino De Laurentiis that will fund a Conan the Barbarian sequel. It can cost exactly the same as the current movie. We'll give you the same budget. However, we insist that that the rating must be PG, and that way it's going to earn 30% more, which means that we'll give you a 30% bonus. And then, of course, Dino De Laurentiis was all in. That was one thing that went wrong. And he was so so motivated by that bonus that he decided to get personally involved with the writing process. I have the first draft for Conan the Destroyer. And that very first draft, it needed work, but it ain't half bad. I mean, that's a movie. That would have been a decent Conan movie. But then Dino De Laurentiis got involved, and he gave more and more notes to make it simpler and stupider and dumber. And in the end, the original writers, they left because they couldn't in good conscience continue making the movie worse and worse. And so the Laurentiis, he just found like a screenwriter who would do anything. And he then worked from the most recent and worst draft from the original writers, and then cobbled together the joke of a script that remained. But still, that script was too ambitious for what they were technically able to pull off, and they didn't have a John Milius directing it to keep them in check and basically say, we can't do this. We have to rewrite it into something that we can actually work with. I mean, remember, like, Milius was the one that rewrote it to make Schwarzenegger a quiet type specifically because he knew that would work. He wasn't there. Instead, you had Richard Fleischer, who was a great director back in the day, but he was old at the very tail end of his career, so he wasn't going to rock any boats when he knew that he could probably squeeze another couple of movies out of Dino De Laurentiis. So he basically did what he was told. And if Dino De Laurentiis wanted a shit PG movie, remember, this was before they had invented PG-13.
Yeah.
Then a shit PG movie was exactly what he was going to deliver. And then that's all she wrote.
But then you got something like Red Sonja, which is like...
Yeah, and that was Richard Fleischer's reward for playing ball. Since he played ball and he made the movie that Dino De Laurentiis wanted to make, well, that actually paid off, because then he got to make another movie for him, namely Red Sonja.
But then you've got Arnold playing a character who's not Conan, but like might as well be. It's really weird.
Yeah, there's two things to that. One is it has to do with the movie rights, because the character, Calidor, is obviously a Conan stand-in. It's just that in order to make more money on the Red Sonja license, they had separated the Red Sonja and the Conan license into two different properties. And Conan was part of the Conan license and not the Red Sonja license.
Oh, it's so frustrating. Because imagine if they'd done like a series of R-rated Conan movies and Red Sonja movies, and they would cross over and stuff. Like, they could have been awesome. It could have been like some weird sword and sorcery MCU back in the day.
Absolutely.
With it.
Especially if you had then made like a prequel set in the Atlantean age with King Kull. You could have done like a sequel set thousands of years later in Solomon Kane and Bran Mak Morn. You could have made an MCU of Robert E. Howard characters. You could have done that. They had the opportunity. What they didn't have was the will, the vision, or the talent behind the scenes, because Dino De Laurentiis was the one who had the rights, and he was way too busy mucking things up by making them as stupid and as PG as possible, destroying what could have been a great franchise, rather than doing that. And it's so frustrating, because it could have been one of the all-time greats. But the one ultimately to blame for it, and like Dino De Laurentiis is no longer around to defend himself, but really, he was the one who dropped the ball several times over.
Yeah. And I think back then there probably just wasn't the same forward thinking maybe that you get nowadays about the potential for creating like a shared universe and all that stuff. It would almost just be, what can we squeeze out of each individual movie? And if
Yes.
that works, great. If not, fuck it, who cares? Like, give me another bucket of cocaine.
Yeah. You know who was the most visionary, though? That was Oliver Stone. Through his buckets of cocaine, he actually had a vision, because he wanted a series of 12 Conan movies. Of course, this was just his vision. It was never shared by the producers who actually made the movie. But when he first wrote his script, he saw that as the first of a series of 12 movies.
Did
And
Oliver
those
Stone
could be spun off to anything? But yeah, sorry, you were saying.
No, was one of his drafts not that this whole thing was going to take place in some post-apocalyptic future?
Yeah, no, that's he only wrote the one draft, and yeah, that was an implied part of it. It's never stated explicitly, but it's and this is something that the ultimate director could have chosen to change. But in his script, it is implied that this is not the distant past, it is the very distant future. It is such a distant future that our past or our present is a long forgotten memory of a past glory day. And that's actually a theme that's very Howardian in that sense, because one of the key points of Robert E. Howard's writing, that's the inventor of Conan, or the writer behind Conan, is this clash between civilization versus barbarism. And his answer to it is that barbarism will always prevail. Civilization is fleeting. It takes a lot of circumstances for a civilization to spring up, and it's very easy for that civilization to collapse. And that is something that has happened many, many times throughout history. And that's one of the themes of his writing, is that a civilization rises, but then it becomes corrupt, and it crumbles from within. And when it's crumbled from within, then it's conquered by outside barbarians. And then the process repeats itself. Then those barbarians become civilized. They become the new civilization. Then gradually they become corrupt. And when they become corrupted, they no longer have the internal cohesion to withstand outside forces. And then a new set of barbarians come and conquer and end their civilization. Rinse and repeat, and this is what has happened throughout history. So what Oliver Stone did was he basically just extrapolated that a certain number of thousands of years into the future. So then the Conan stories took place, or his Conan story is implied to have taken place in the distant future, which only fits the theme that nothing really changes, and civilization can only go so far before it's reset and starts over.
Yeah. No, that there's definitely already hinted at in this movie about how they find civilization, and how decadent it is and all that. It's all tied into this. I love all the people are just coming up with Conan movies for all the 12 different ones that they were going to be. It's like Bill and Conan's Excellent Adventure, Conan and Commander: The Far Side of the World, but Conan Strikes Back.
Like in the 80s, that actually might have been a title. The worst of it.
Beverly Hills Conan.
Conan in space. Let's not even joke about that.
Yeah. No, it's been pretty cool talking about this movie. I was going to say there's quite a few super chats, but I know you're on a little bit of a time limit tonight. I don't know if you've got time to go through a few, or
yeah, I can go through a few. Absolutely.
Okay, cool, man. Yeah, just give me a second actually to bring them up. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment while I bring up the super chat list because I have to go back through them all. That's not what I want. Yeah, there we go.
Meantime, how excited are you for the potential Netflix reboot?
Well, if it's Netflix making it, not really. No. All you need is Kevin Smith writing it, and then you're sorted. You know.
Yeah.
Conan dies. First episode. Yay! Valeria takes over.
I don't know who the showrunner is, but I know that there is a showrunner. So I hope it will be a good one. And what I will say, though, is that unlike He-Man and many others, Conan the Barbarian actually has a corporate advocate, because even if you read the current Marvel Conan comics that come from Marvel Comics, they're actually pretty decent. And the reason for that is that Marvel doesn't own Conan. They only license him from Cabinet Entertainment, which are ultimately the owners of Conan. And every single issue that they write has to be quality checked by Cabinet Entertainment, by the CEO of Cabinet Entertainment, one Fredrik Malmberg, and he will act then as quality assurance to make sure that they can't do what they want. They can't give Conan the same kind of treatment that they do the characters that they already own, which is why Marvel's Conan comics to this day are pretty badass. And Conan was originally at Amazon, and the series they were setting up to make would have made one of the all-time fantasy greats, something to rival Game of Thrones, but it didn't happen because it was too problematic for Amazon. Then they took it away from there, and with Netflix, well, who knows what can happen? But I think there's a very good chance that Conan can escape reasonably unscathed, for the very reason that it really is just one character that you have to get right, and that's Conan himself. In terms of like all the other diversity and stuff like that you have to get in there, it's really is no problem, because as I said, Conan, he's a wandering barbarian. You have him traveling across the world through all kinds of diverse locales and everything, and it's always been natural in the story.
I think it's just whether they're able to still portray him as this dominant force, without having to have him upstaged by other people who are more diverse. That would be the real key to making it a workable series, And I feel like Hollywood just won't allow that. It's not going to allow a Conan who's just absolute ass kicker, who can dominate every battle and stuff. He would almost have to be taken down a peg because he's too toxic.
Yeah, well, that was why it didn't happen at Amazon. So we'll see. We'll see. What I will say is that the 2011 movie. That was their cabinet, or Fredrik Malmberg did not have creative control, but they did have some influence. And the movie kind of sucks, but Conan himself, the way he was portrayed, was absolute badass.
Yeah.
So, as long as they're able to preserve that, then we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. I think this is genuinely my favorite title, Conan Heads.
Nice one.
No, man. Right, so super chats anyway. MTH says, "Hey Drinker, have you had a chance to read the message I sent you in Patreon? I'd love to see your thoughts as to whether it's something you'd be interested in or not. All the best, man." Thank you very much, dudes. I haven't seen it yet because I tend to leave it a week or two on Patreon, and then I just go through all my messages at once and then send out all my responses. So I've obviously just not looked at it yet, but whatever it is that you're asking, I will definitely give you a response, so not to worry. Nick B says, "What is best in YouTube? To downvote your enemies, to see them ratioed before you, and to hear the lamentations of their women. Conan the YouTuber." Perfect. Stephen Lanuto said, "Hail Drinker, sending my chat early, being I'll be at work when you start. A salute to James Earl Jones, a man so boss that even the snake handler said the snake was too relaxed around him." Nice one. James Earl Jones is awesome. Love him. Also from Stephen Lanuto, Also, salute to Robert Howard for writing some epic stories, including one where a warrior took an axe, threw it across a castle moat, and nailed a guy in the head. One of the most metal deaths ever. That sounds awesome. Yeah, Robert Howard wrote some incredible stories, apparently.
He
Because he had a
did.
huge body of work, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Especially considering that he was only like active for like 10 years because he offed himself at age 30.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was. He had a huge body of work, amazing work, relative to his tender years.
Because he wrote a lot of pulp stuff, didn't he?
Yeah, it was pulp he wrote.
Yeah, yeah.
And I tend to like that because to me, like the pulp era is like my favorite era where fiction is concerned. Because at the time they wrote short stories. Of course, they could write novel length, but then it had to be like split up across several magazines, and they were writing for an audience. So it had to be commercial. Like these were the precursors to comic books. These were the precursors to HBO. These were the precursors to all our modern entertainment. Like before there was youth, any of that, it was the pulp stories. So these writers, they really had to produce a lot of content. So much of what is in the pulp stories are forgettable for that reason. But the writers that really rose, they got so much practice. They got so many opportunities at honing their craft. They had to learn to write and really perfect their craft fast. Otherwise, they wouldn't get paid.
Yeah.
And the popular ones, like Howard, like Lovecraft, I mean, the two of them, they were friends. They sent correspondence back and forth. They influenced each other's work. They were the ones that like rose to the top of the fields and that we still remember and talk about today. Like some of the all-time great writers were pulp writers. Poe is another one.
No, yeah, I think it's in modern day, it's something that's easy to look down on, that genre and that era of writing. You know, it was trashy and exploitative and all that, and it's not in the conventional way that we think of it. It's just that they were writing for a mass market.
Yeah, and in so doing, they lay the foundations of our entire pop culture. I mean, all the characters that we know and love today, I mean, Batman, Superman, He-Man, you can trace the origins for nearly all of them, directly or indirectly, straight to the pulp era.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting stuff. It's something it's weird how easily overlooked it is now.
Yeah. I mean, just like, for instance, Batman, he's a comic book character, but the inspirations for him, it's a previous comic book character in the Phantom, and the Phantom was a transitional character, and a much more direct influence was Zorro. I mean, without Zorro, there would be no Batman, and Zorro is as pulp character as they come.
Yeah.
And just look at all of the other characters that are derived from Batman in turn, and you can trace a direct line through all of them back to Zorro, which is pulp era.
Yeah. God, that's crazy.
Yeah, or Star Wars back to Flash Gordon. Also, like you can trace the line straight back to pulp.
Yeah. Oh, George Lucas was massively
yeah. That's what I mean.
By all those adventure serials and the pulp stories and everything. Same with Indiana Jones.
Exactly. All of our current pop culture, you can trace it straight back to the pulp era.
Shark Gentures here says, "Drinker talking peak Arnold? Yes, please. Damn right. This was peak Arnold for sure." Chucksenhausen says, "So Cobra Kai season 4 will be coming back by the end of the year. Will the return of Terry Silver joining Kreese? Will this be the best season yet?" I fucking hope so, because those two together, that should be great. I'm excited to see them back. RRTNZ says, "Drinker, you sultan of suspenseful scripting. Been looking forward to this stream. Saw Conan in 1982. Loved it ever since. Unapologetic action, a thundering score, great villain. Arnold's performance equals pure awesome. Cheers." That sums it up perfectly, I would say. Antihero says, "Hey Drinker, thanks for keeping me sane and entertained. We'd love to hear your thoughts on The Way of the Gun sometimes. Greetings from Germany." I would need to watch it to give you my thoughts, but one day. But thanks for the donation, man. I appreciate it. Elizabeth Lyons gave me a super sticker for $3, so thank you. Shark Dentures says, Arnold wasn't a great actor, but I will say he's a master at finding his niche of success. An emotionless killer robot, an inarticulate savage, perfect. Yeah, he found the things that worked for him, and he worked within his own, I guess, his own limitations. If that's the right way of looking at it. He understood what he could do.
Yeah, he was able to take his limitations and turn them into strengths.
Yeah, and that's pretty good, pretty impressive. And obviously worked for him. Grand Wazoo 42 gave me a super sticker, so thank you. Scorpion P2C says, I gave up on Netflix and spent the monthly on your book, but you have given so much entertainment to me on here. Enjoy a drink on me. Also love you, Andre, as well.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, man. Stikio 1990 says, can we please talk about ScarJo suing Disney? If it's already been talked about, have you considered completing the Cornetto trilogy for Happy Hour? I can answer the second one first. Yeah, I'm talking to Mahler about it, so we are going to be doing The World's End in a couple of weeks. He's just working on some stuff at the moment. What is this stuff about Scarlett Johansson suing Disney? I don't.
Yeah, no, this is something very, very recent. She's suing them because she gets box office points out of Black Widow, yes? Mm-hmm. And when Disney has it on streaming at the same time, that means less box office, meaning less box office points for her. So even though she's one of the highest paid actresses in the world, that was a slap in the face she will not take. So she's suing Disney. There's more Disney stuff happening. So if I may do like a shameless self-plug, we'll be discussing it tomorrow on Midnight's Edge in the morning with Kamran Pasha, who is coming out for the occasion. So we'll take a deep dive into it then.
No, superb. I really like his interviews. Actually, the guy's got a lot of insights.
Yeah. Tomorrow is going to be very cool. So that's 9 a.m. LA time, which translates to 5 p.m. UK time and 6 p.m. Central European time. That's when we'll have Kamran Pasha taking on the recent Disney stuff going on, including ScarJo.
And obviously it goes without saying, the link to Midnight's Edge is in the description for this video. So please give them a subscribe, because their insights into like so many of the things that are going on in Hollywood, behind the scenes at the studios, are fantastic. Like, I pretty much watch every video that you guys put out. So I definitely recommend, if you're interested in knowing what's happening before it really happens and before it breaks, then I would recommend you follow Midnight's Edge pronto. So the link is in the description. What's the next one? Phil Moore says, Arnold is Conan. The sooner you come to terms with it, the sooner you'll understand what is best in life. Absolutely.
Don't know if I agree, but but I see the reasoning behind the sentiment.
Philip Edwards gave me $1 super chat, so thank you, man. Unhinged Entertainment says, Drinker and Midnight talking Conan. My sword is ready in hand. Sword in quotations. Brilliant. Cody Griffin says, Drinker, please write a script for a new Conan movie. Well, I would if they'll let me. I just don't think they'd make it. My script would call for boobs, lots of boobs. Trenton Quinn says, watching the new He-Man made me think of a quote from Dartigan. Finding a razor blade in my salad is subverting my expectations. However, I won't applaud you for it. Pretty much. Yeah, He-Man, I don't think was anyone's favorite show when they relaunched it.
I wanted it to be my favorite show. I really, really did. I mean, He-Man was my gateway to everything else. So
it started out good. The first like 20 minutes were good.
It started out really strong, those first 20 minutes, and then it was all downhill from there.
Because I got such a nostalgic feeling seeing that old style animation.
God, I love that animation. Oh.
Because it's so cool to see. Like, it's so much better than that soulless crap that you see nowadays, and it's everywhere.
Can you imagine if they had used the scripts of the 2000 series and just redone the animation with this animation? How amazing would not that have been?
Yep, there you got your winning combination right there. But no, they had to subvert our expectations. Thanks, guys. Um, what was the next one here? Yeah, Douglas Burton says one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. I don't think either of us would argue on that one.
No, far from it. I'd agree with you completely.
Shark Denture says, Drinker, what is best in life? To empty all bottles, to get a lap dance from Tatiana, and wake up not knowing where you are. That's every Saturday for me, man.
Yeah.
Road King Thor says, Drinker, have you watched the show Justified? If so, what are your thoughts? I haven't seen Justified, I'm afraid, so I couldn't tell you. I don't know if you've seen it, Andre.
I haven't, so I have no clue. Sorry about that.
Man. Sorry, dude. Great Cthulhu says, Hails, you two. REH was a titan up there with Lovecraft and Lieber. His prose and Conan kindled my love of fantasy, made me a writer. Polydorus score unrivaled. Atlantean sword and the orgy. Perfect. Yeah, we all love the orgy scene.
Yeah, absolutely. And REH, of course, is short for Robert E. Howard.
Yes. Yeah. I did love the Atlantean sword in this. Apparently, the one that they crafted, it cost $10,000 to make because it was.
I can believe that.
But apparently, it was too heavy for them to use during the fight scenes. It was only used for the close-up scenes, so they had to have like more lightweight, cheap ones made for that, so they could swing them properly. Because the ones that they originally done were too unbalanced, apparently. So there you go.
They were made to look pretty, not to be used. So yeah.
Curtis D of Montana says, Hello, Drinker. Hello, Andre. As you can see, I'm a huge fan of Conan and Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's got a picture of Arnold there in his profile pic. Nice. JD Beauchamp says, Hail, Drinker. We all know you're a great writer, but what are some of your favorite books and authors? The one I always come back to is Lord of the Rings for just sheer entertainment and epic storytelling. Love it. What are some of the other ones? I love adventure sort of stories. So, I mean, when I was growing up, I read a lot of the Clive Cussler novels, just like globetrotting adventures, just things like that. Like not like high-minded storytelling or anything, but just really good, fun stories that kind of fire your imagination. So probably, things like that. I don't know if Andre, you've got any favorite authors or anything that you wanted to shout out.
Well, in addition to Robert E. Howard, another favorite of mine is Arthur C. Clarke, who also started out in the pulp era, went on to work with Stanley Kubrick, wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey, or rather co-wrote it with Kubrick. But that novel is one of my all-time favorites, as is Rendezvous with Rama, something that he wrote all on his own. Johnston McCulley is another one. Really, really enjoyed his Zorro stories. And of course, Michael Moorcock with his multiverse stories, including Elric, the precursor for The Witcher. Beyond that, enjoy a couple of Norwegian authors and some Swedish ones that few here will ever have heard about.
Nice. Nick Macavina said, Drinker, would you ever consider reviewing Mel Gibson's Apocalypto? Easily one of the most immersive movies ever made. Thanks, gents. Cheers. It's funny. I keep overlooking Apocalypto because I feel like it came out in the wake of The Passion of the Christ, and that was the one that kind of swallowed up everyone's attention for so long with Mel Gibson movies. But Apocalypto was pretty good. It was pretty unflinching a lot of the time. But yeah, a really interesting movie about a period and a people that you never really see on screen. So yeah, it'd be an interesting one to talk about, I think.
You know what's also very interesting is that movie, whether by accident or design, probably by accident, may be the single most Robert E. Howardian movies ever made.
Really?
Because for real, the themes in that movie are pure Howard. If you look at the story, what is it? It is you have basically a tribe of relative barbarians in historic South America that go up against a more civilized group, like the civilization of that era. But that civilization is decadent. It is in the process of falling. It's in the state of decay.
Yeah, good
What
point.
happens, and what happens towards the very end? There come the true barbarians that spell the end of their entire civilization.
Yeah.
That is everything that Robert E. Howard wrote about.
That's an interesting point. I'd never kind of looked at it in those terms before.
But if you rewatch that movie again, like I'd love to do like one of these with that movie, because literally that's the theme of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I believe even that quote is somewhere in that movie. I think it is that the quote is that before a civilization is conquered from outside, it crumbles from within. And that's kind of like the point. And that's, I mean, Howard himself said something along those exact lines.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's especially relevant nowadays.
It is.
We're talking about civilizations crumbling from the inside.
It is more relevant than it's ever been in our lifetime before, because that's kind of where we are.
Yeah. What's the next one? Elijah Potts says, really sucks that the entertainment industry is terrified of having hyper-masculine male characters. Yeah, I think it's just terrified of even barely borderline masculine male characters. Like, we're not even allowed to have them nowadays. Yeah, it really does suck. And that's why so many movies now just fail on that ground.
And the tragedy there is also like children's entertainment. The point that I made in like our He-Man coverage is that the single most masculine role model for male or for boys growing up right now is Ryder of Paw Patrol fame, and he's a little soy boy.
Yeah. It's like, what are they going to take from this, honestly? So what kind of people is that going to turn them into?
Yeah, exactly.
Douglas Burton says, remember the scene where wolves are chasing Conan? There's a hysterical outtake where the wolves catch Arnold and take him down. I didn't know if they caught it on film, but I'd love to see it. That'd be great.
I don't know that they released it, but obviously they filmed it.
So, get this fucking dog off me.
Yeah.
Oh man, that'd be great. Curtis D of Montana says the Valeria sword, the Father's sword, and the Atlantean sword are epic weapons. The Atlantean one cost $100,000 to make. They made two of them. Yeah, like I was saying earlier, they were too unbalanced to be used in the fight scenes. But I think Arnold had one above his desk for a good many years. They let him keep one, which is a pretty fucking cool souvenir to have from this movie. Chris Lord says, crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of their women. Yeah, great quote. Trenton Quinn says, fun fact, they didn't let Arnold do the German dub of Terminator because his accent was considered too rural. Really?
Yeah, no, that's true. Because Schwarzenegger, he is from Austria, so that's a strike against him to begin with. That's kind of like that he's from Scotland as opposed to from England, and he speaks like his local dialect. He sounds like the worst hillbilly hick imaginable to Germans. Because
right.
Not only is he Austrian, he's from the rural Austrian countryside.
That's interesting, actually. Yeah, so apparently he wasn't suitable to do the Terminator. That's quite cool.
Yeah, no, so he's always been dubbed by other actors, and you have like many people around the world in dubbing countries that like wonder why do Americans say that Schwarzenegger is not a good actor? I mean, he's a great actor here in our dubbing because he's dubbed by really talented voice artists.
Destiny Captain here says, have either of you seen the Conan musical? It's a one-song parody by John and Al Kaplan here on YouTube. It's glorious. It runs like 2 minutes.
It is glorious. It's amazing. Drinker, if you haven't seen it, you have to see it. It's a piece of art.
I will I'll watch that after this.
Conan the musical. Everyone should go check that out after the stream.
I've seen Aliens the musical. That is fantastic. I think that's about 5 minutes long.
Have you seen Dread the musical? It's around the same people. That's also
No.
amazing.
Oh man, I'll need to give these a watch. Jonas Larson here says, "Drinker, you non-Austrian giant of a man. A reminder that Conan wielded his sword one-handed because his pecs wouldn't allow two hands on the hilt." Possibly true. There's a scene actually where he's doing some sword drills early in the film when he's been training under a Japanese sword master, and you see him pass the sword around his back, and as big as he is, you can tell how difficult it is for him just having to get it around his massive wide back, and like his arms being really big. It looks really kind of clumsy, like he's like, I can't quite reach. Yeah, I think that's some of the problems you've got if you're a bodybuilder. Like you're not able to do the things that we do so easily. But oh well, I'm sure he compensated. Mark Marderosian gave me $5 super chat. Thanks, man. Douglas Burton says, one of the cool things about Conan is that it's a world without a dominant or central culture. It's a weird intermeshing of many different proto-cultures. Yeah, I do like that. And I don't know if it's expanded on in the books, but certainly in the movie, there's just like almost city-states that each have their own kind of king or whatever, but no one seems to be in charge of the overall world.
Yeah, no, because it's a pre-mass communication world. So really, it's just city-states, and sometimes it's countries, but really the city is more important than the country. And there are many tiny countries, everything like that, all with their local squabbles and Game of Thrones style power for leadership that Conan frequently finds himself thrust into. So yeah, that absolutely is part of the stories, and that's actually part of the backdrop for them. Is that basically he's a wanderer that goes around looking for trouble, more or less, and goes to all of these different cities and different countries, sells his sword or saves a damsel in distress, and then he introduces some kind of change, and then the story happens.
Oh, interesting. Just before I go on, Andre, I know you had about 2 hours or so available tonight. I don't know,
yeah, I really should be leaving here. So yeah, but it was an absolute blast to be here, talk some Conan with you. So
no,
yeah,
likewise, man. When I thought about this movie, I was like I know Andre's pretty knowledgeable about the Conan universe, and I figured you'd quite like to talk about it. So it's been great to go through this film with you, man. It's been good to have you on for this.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me. It's been an absolute blast. Always love talking some Conan. It's like one of the movies that I really know a lot about. So yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Perfect, man. And yeah, like I say, the link to Midnight's Edge is in the description now. So if you're in any way interested in hearing what's going on in the industry before the news kind of breaks, then I very much recommend Midnight's Edge, because they produce great videos about all of this stuff, particularly with what's going on with Marvel and with all the stuff with Masters of the Universe and Netflix and all that. Like you've got some great stuff going on there, man. So yeah, I'm looking forward to your next one.
Absolutely. So yeah, look back for our live chat with Kamran Pasha tomorrow, where we'll be going through these latest Disney things, and that so much happens at the same time now. It's not a coincidence. That is coordinated. There's infighting going on. There's factions, and we're going to break it down in detail tomorrow. With that, Drinker, thanks for having me. It's been an absolute blast.
Thanks, Andre, man. Appreciate it.
Take care.
All right. Well, it looks like it's just me. So I'm going to go through the super chats, and I'll try and get through as many as I can. It may be that I have to do like a catch-up stream tomorrow if I run out of time, but we'll see how we go. So the next one was from Yum Yum Meet 'em Up says, so apparently Scarlett Johansson is suing Disney over breach of contract for Black Widow, the movie release, as we were discussing earlier, because they simultaneously released it on streaming, and that cuts into her box office revenue. It's safe to say the honeymoon phase of the MCU is over. Yeah, I don't think she's got any bridges left with Disney now. Now that she's out of the MCU, she's burned them. Stephen Otten says, Hail Drinker and Andre, Conan the Barbarian is one of the great movies of the 80s. We need more like it now. R.I.P. William Smith. Yeah, we absolutely do. I just don't think we're going to get it because they're not allowed anymore. We're not allowed to have fun. But hey, at least we've got this. Time for RPGs says, turn on slow chat so you and us can read them. I don't know how to do that, actually. It just kind of normally streams as quickly as the chats come in. And they do tend to be quite quick. Unfortunately. Douglas Burton says Thulsa Doom was supposed to be an Atlantean in the movie. Okay, that would have tied in with the sword and everything. Would have been quite appropriate that he gets killed with an Atlantean sword. Or in fact, no, he doesn't. He gets killed with Conan's father's sword. Yeah, it might have been interesting to get an insight into who the Atlanteans were in that case. Bytor says, my two favorite YouTubers. Conan was one of the most beautifully directed, composed, and written movies of all time. Very underrated, in my opinion. Yeah, hopefully we've done it justice tonight. Lust for Words says, King Osric, there comes a time, thief, when the jewels cease to sparkle, when the gold loses its luster, when the throne room becomes a prison, and all that's left is a father's love for his child. Yep, very true. And I obviously butchered the quote earlier because I was trying to do it from memory, but you've got it there. Nailed. Quinn Lewis says, disappointed in you, Drinker. Discussing Conan the Barbarian, but the thumbnail is Conan the Destroyer. Shame, sir. Yeah, I was just hunting for thumbnails and I didn't have much time, unfortunately. And I just saw that one. I was like, I think that's from Destroyer because Arnold looks different, but it's a cool visual anyway. But when I re-upload this, I'll put a proper thumbnail on. Zetho GBR says, Drinker, when you upload the stream, could you please upload it with the live chat? YouTube doesn't always let me download the chat with it. And if it does, it usually takes about 2 hours for some reason because their own system for downloading your own videos is absolute shit. So I tend to just use a third-party downloader. But if people really want to see the chat in it, because there's some awesome Conan movie ideas here, I might just try and get it done. I'll put in the time. What's the next one? King Kothar says, Thulsa Doom is a cull villain, though. For a Conan villain, you need someone who represents the decadence, evil, and decay of civilization and elitism. Athoth Amon by way of Harvey Weinstein, if you will. Yeah, that would be about right. The decadence of Hollywood. And Rancho Fiesta gave me $5 super chat. Thanks, mate. Volcanicus Rex says, Street Fighter was absolutely Raul Julia's movie. Everyone else was simply allowed to be in it with him. Yeah, they were. And he owned it. So I've got to give the guy credit for it. Waldo Gerard says, hey, Drinker, have you ever played Conan Exiles? And if so, what was your opinion of it? No wrong answers. It'll be fine, lad. I have never played that. No, I didn't know it even existed. Now I'm intrigued. Joey Bryant says, hail, Critical Drinker and Andre. With all this talk about Conan the Barbarian, is there any room for everyone's favorite fantasy warrior, Redhead? Besides the bad casting choices, is there anything else that makes you dread the remake? It being woke. That's pretty much it. It not really getting into the spirit of Conan. I just feel like you could never make a TV show that has that feel of this movie nowadays. It just wouldn't be allowed. It would have to be more diverse, and it would have to be fair and balanced, and it would have to always portray, everyone who's not a white male in the best light possible. So, yeah, I got no faith in it. Paulus Plain says, the Conan sword was used by Arnold Schwarzenegger as reference to American democracy, tempered steel, fire, anvil, water, in regards to the violent attack on the Capitol. P.S. with loves from Norway to all Americans. Nice one. Yeah, I don't know what Arnold's up to with his swords nowadays. Like, I just know he was able to keep them from after making this movie. What's the next one? Alexander says, hey, Drinker, love your reviews. Do you prepare some notes before seeing the movie and change the script after, or do you start it only after you saw it? Yeah, I would only ever start my scripts after I've seen the movie, because I don't even know what tack I'm going to take with it. I don't know what my approach is going to be. I need to see it and think about it for a while, and then, think, okay, what's my overall, feeling of this movie? What am I going to start talking about? Because, I couldn't really go into it. It would be like implying that I've kind of made up my mind about a film before I've even seen it, which is, it's kind of not how you want to review things. Marksman of 117B says, Drinker, you need to watch the World War II movie Come and See. Uses horror-style filming to boost the drama. The child actor did such a good job, he was sent to therapy because the film crew thought he was traumatized by the filming. Jesus. Well, you definitely need to watch that one then. Chris Foster says, Drinker, why do you have a picture of Tila as the cover of this stream? Yeah, that's a slimmed down version of Tila as well. Yeah, what a joke. Shy Max says, I actually took up blacksmithing as a hobby a few years ago. Get the steel too hot and hard, it'll shatter. Too cool and soft, and it'll bend. Riddle of steel applied to Conan, strong yet adaptive. Nice. Mr. Tickletrunk says, ladies and gentlemen, look at him. He's soaked in Conan. Observe Andre in his natural habitat. You can't see him, but you can hear him smiling. Yeah, it was great to have Andre on tonight. Lost for Words says, Thulsa Doom, my child, you have come to me, my son. For who now is your father if it's not me? I'm the wellspring from which you flow. When I'm gone, you will have never been. Yeah, what a quote. Tarmanel says, any opinion on the existing pilot for the unrealized series Korgoth of Barbaria from 2006? Quite an interesting parody on the theme of Conan. I have never even heard of that. Is the pilot on YouTube? Can you see it? If so, yeah, I'll take a look. Cola Commando says, in UK, final battle is cut due to horses being hurt. Yes, this movie wasn't well rated by the animal rights people because there's a few scenes like that. I think a dog gets kicked in one of the city scenes, and yeah, I'm presuming Arnold doesn't really knock a camel out, but maybe he did strike it. I'm not sure. But yeah, horses being tripped is not great in films, but it's how they had to do it. Bytor says, this is the perfect show don't tell movie. Absolutely. Ties into what I said at the start. Pretty light on dialogue, doesn't feel the need to explain everything to you. It just lets you watch it and take it in. It's great. V for Vindicator says, hey Drinker, there is a Conan remake in the works, and I think the best person to work on it is Kevin Smith, considering what he did with Masters of the Universe. Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure he would do great work with it. Alicorn says, would love to see a Conan Lovecraft crossover. Yeah, because like Andre was saying, apparently they corresponded, so that would be weird. Chris Rapasso says, Queen of the Black Coast or Elephant Tower would be great adaptations. You could easily do today, I think. Too bad modern day will ruin them. Yeah, I would agree. Charles Hurst gave me a $10 super sticker of a thumbs up. Thanks, man. Joel Reyes says, two of the most insightful and articulate gentlemen in our sphere discussing an epic movie. Can't find a better way to spend an evening. Thanks, man. And it was a pleasure to talk with Andre about this. Alexander says, how do you know all that stuff about movies? Is there a book called Movie Trivia, or do you just wiki it? Love your accents, easy to understand. I think when you're into a film, you just pick up bits and pieces about it over the years. And, Andre being a big fan of Conan, knows all this stuff. I've always been a big fan of Arnold, so I kind of know like a lot of the movies he was in and some of the behind the scenes stuff. So between us, we knew a fair bit. Kane Crow says, you both must watch Korgoth of Barbaria. There's only one episode as it's batshit insane. I wish we could have gotten a full show. Now I've got to see it now. Roger P says, ever seen the 1980s Serial? It's a hilarious comedy in which an average guy, Martin Mull, takes on the early New Age types. Christopher Lee, Sally Kellerman, Bill Macy. Give it a watch. Nah, I've never heard of Serial before. But yeah, if you're taking on hippies, then it's got to be good. Shine Mask, hear the lamentations of the llamas. I'm telling you, that llama was getting fucked in this film, man. That's my hill to die on. Joe Blum says, have you read the novels or short stories? I haven't, but Andre definitely has. Danny Numero 6 says, this movie has some of the best fight scenes I've ever seen. They're not overly choreographed, they feel raw, brutal, and you feel the impact of every punch thrown and every clashing of swords. Not to mention the fantastic blood effects. Yeah, so it was all done with packs of blood inside the actors' costumes, and then they could just burst them whenever they got struck with the swords. So very gory, and it's excellent for it. And yeah, they're not big technical sword fights. even Valeria, as agile as she is, like it's still pretty basic fighting, but it feels like that's kind of how you would fight. It's not all fancy and showy. Finbar White says, "Hey, Critical Drinker and Andre, I'm enjoying the conversation. How would you do a future film with Conan?" I don't know, man. I mean, it would have to be made by an independent or something rather than one of the big studios because it would just get butchered today. Yeah. First of all, you need an actor to play Conan, and that's no easy task either. To find someone like Arnold, that's like a once-in-a-generation thing. The closest equivalent we've got now is like The Rock, and I don't think he'd be right for playing Conan. So, fuck, I don't even know where you would start with it. Zitho GBR says they should make a Conan movie like Logan, Arnie playing old Conan, banging crazy witches, dying a heroic death for some greater things. Great idea. I think if you'd done it 15 years ago, it probably would have been good. Like when Arnold was still physically capable of doing sword fighting and stuff, but he's just too fucking old now. Wicked Person says Boris Vallejo and Frank Fanzetta covers meant I had hide the covers from my parents when I was 12 and taking them out of the library. Okay. Berserk Shit Bear says, nice of you to share my PFP. Nice. Rui Inacio says, best romance, great lines by Valeria and from Conan, just one line, you're not a guard. Yeah. Roger P says, I understand Max von Sydow and James Earl Jones both gave acting tips to Arnold. Yeah, that's true. He helped both of them with exercise and diet tips. I think he probably should have helped James Earl Jones a little bit more because he's a big lad. But yeah, James Earl Jones particularly, he apparently was impressed with Arnold's hard work ethic, so he was happy to help him out with a few tips on acting. So nice one to him. Steve Meyer says, Hail Drinker, do you like the Grand Tour Top Gear and are you excited for their special tomorrow in Loch Ness, Scotland? Thanks. I am actually. I fucking love the Grand Tour. The sort of the camaraderie the three of them have got is just great. And say what you want about Jeremy Clarkson, like he is an absolute dick, but he's kind of a likable dick at the same time. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'll be watching it. Peterson ZF says, what is best in life? Crush Chris Chibnall, see him driven before you, and hear the lamentations of Jodie Whittaker. Yep, they are leaving Doctor Who. Everyone celebrate. They're leaving after the next series, and it's been confirmed. So the 10 or 15 people that are still fans of Doctor Who, I'm sure they can celebrate now. Tanaru says, I'm so happy there are more people that think like me. Bravo to you two gentlemen for saying what we all feel about Hollywood pillaging and raping our childhood heroes and properties. Keep up the good work and good journey. Thank you very much, my friend, and we'll do our best. Graham Godfrey says, love my t-shirt, so very soft. Wore it to my cardiologist. Nah, it'll be fine. Okay. Naria Fire. I'm a big fan of Bakshi's Fire and Ice. Christ, that was that animated one. And wondered what your opinions are on it. Also, my sister and I can't say love, but had an affection for the Barbarians. I like the axe better. Yeah, Fire and Ice. I just remember the woman in it with massive jugs who wears like the world's tiniest bikini. Those guys must have had an absolute joy doing her animation, like because she is fully animated. But it's an incredible piece of work, actually, as a technical achievement. That movie, it's like way ahead of its time. Nick Banks says, would be interested to discuss the inclusion of Reg Sonja as part of the Hyboria universe. Like these films were nearly a franchise juggernaut. Yeah, if they just stuck to their guns with what worked in Conan, that could have been something really interesting. Like Andre and I were saying, you could have had an interconnected universe 30 years before the MCU even was a thing. What's next? Tarmanel. By the way, speaking of barbaric themes, who is more corrupt by civilization? 1, Scottish Highlanders, or 2, Norwegian Vikings? Who has more barbarism and blood? I don't know. Like, if you go back through our history, we've all killed lots of people, and we all like drinking and pillaging. So I think the Norwegians were probably better at it, to be fair. Pretty sure they colonized us. So yeah, I'd probably give it to them. Jory Helmenem gave me 306. That's something I didn't think I would find myself saying tonight. But yeah, thank you for the sex, Jory. MTH says, "Hey drinker, for your eyes only, but I'm just tuning in now. But did you see the super chat I sent you 3 hours before the start of the stream today?" Yes, as I was saying, it was the message you sent me on Patreon. Like I say, I tend to go through all my Patreon messages all at once. So when I get to yours, I will definitely reply to it. So don't worry. Travis Happy says, "Walter from The Big Lebowski is based on John Milius." I hope that's true. Miroslav Svub gave me 50 Czech coronas, so thank you, man. Legion Steve says, "Love the movie and love the stream. One of my favorite happy hours you've done. Brilliant. Thank you, man. And it's been a pleasure to do it." Nelson the Gentleman says, "I'm here to drink your beer and steal your rum at the point of a gun. Your alcohol to me will fall because I am here to drink your beer." That's an Hailstorm song. Love it. I can't wait to go see them in December, actually. They're playing in Glasgow. Slognar Meatfist says, "I'll have to miss this chat. Let me say this is awesome." Cheers, mate, and I hope you catch it on the replay. Sean McD says, "Love in the stream, no one knows sword and sorcery better than Andre." No, that dude's an expert. You can tell he's been into it for a long time. What's the next one here? Mr. X says, "Steel rusts, flesh decays, but will is unbreakable. One of my favorite movies. Cheers." That's a great quote, actually. I like that. Paulus Plain says, "The Conan sword was used by Arnold Schwarzenegger as reference to American democracy tempered steel." Oh, yeah, so we've had that one already. Nick C says, "John Milius is a genius, very much influenced by Peckinpah, Ford, and Kurosawa. Never got the recognition he deserves." Yeah, great filmmaker, and this is a perfect example of it. Cola Commando says, "Robert E. Howard wrote this, but never left Texas." I love that. Such a shame that he died so young, took his own life. I think, from what I remember reading, like he was still living with his parents. I think it was just his mother that had survived, and then she died very suddenly, and it broke him, and he couldn't take it, and he couldn't go on, and that was the end for him. Tragic, really. 30 years old. Wicked Person says, "The sword being weaker than the man goes back to Beowulf." Good point, actually. Andre would have a lot more to say about that. Dankovitz says, "Some spare change to support your drinking habits, because it's better to be a famous drunk than an anonymous alcoholic. Cheers." Well, thank you very much, man, and cheers to you. That goes down well. Your Muslim uncle says, "Come on, Mr. Jones, one more Thulsa Doom speech." Roger P says, "Drinker, who's your favourite famous drunk? O'Toole, Harris, Burton, Shaw, Reed, or others?" There's so many to pick from, man. Those guys were fucking legends back in the day. I love Richard Burton, actually. I remember when I was doing my review of Where Eagles Dare, halfway through filming, he just fucking vanished with Richard Harris and Peter O'Toole. I think they went drinking around Europe, and he wasn't seen for like a week, and no one knew where he was. And I just think that's great. He was in the middle of making a movie, and he just said, "Fuck it, I'm off to get drunk with my mates." So yeah, he's probably my favorite. Astro Pictures says, "Drinker, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy. They're absolutely fantastic films that I'm sure you'll enjoy a lot." I've not seen all of them. I think I've seen the first two quite a while back. I remember them being pretty decent. Yeah, the animation's good. The characters are pretty likable. Yeah, I don't remember much in terms of overarching stories or anything like that, but yeah, I remember them being pretty fun, fun movies. Alex A gave me 20 Canadian dollars. Thanks, mate. Magician Sapphire says, "Young drinker and his dad watching Conan and a sex scene pops up. Nah, it'll be fine." Yeah. It's probably when I started drinking, my dad was like, "Here, have a whiskey, son, and sleep through this scene." Slognar Meatfist says, "Enough talk." Throws dagger into offending minion. Second Conan movie. Brilliant. Vladimir Tarutko says, "Hey drinker, love what you're doing. You rock." Thank you, mate. Enoch Mammon says, "Every one of the antagonists was cast because they were taller and more muscular than Arnie. This made them seem more like a legitimate threat against Conan. Imagine that, a hero having to improve himself and overcome challenges." Yeah. Improving yourself and overcoming challenges is just for men to do. Women don't have to do that in modern movies. They are just perfect right away, don't you know? What's the next one? Yeah, it got kind of ridiculous in the second movie. Actually, I'm sure the Bombata, who was like the henchman that Arnold has to fight, he was like played by a guy like Will Chamberlain, I think his name was, and he was close to 7 feet tall. Guy was enormous. He just towered over Arnold. Vin Delenos says, don't know if it's been discussed, but Conan is an opera. It's a ballet. You can watch the whole movie without dialogue and just listen to the music and watch the story unfold. It's a classic. It's like something out of Wagner or something like that. You know, it's got all that Norse mythology in there. Yeah, I kind of agree on that idea about it. It's just the definition of an epic story. Atomic Yakishme says, there's something about Conan. Yeah. The Conan movie ideas are awesome. Mr. Roboto says, we have a Conan Momoa and or Dwayne Johnson. Nah, I wouldn't. Momoa is basically just the only guy who's big and muscular that they could find to play Conan, but I don't think he did a great job with him. And Dwayne is just doesn't have the right persona for it. Wormy Spoon says, Conando. Brilliant. I'd love that. Danny Numero 6 says, hey Drinker, I know you mentioned that Big Trouble in Little China is your favourite movie. What are your thoughts on Escape from New York? I really like it. It's an interesting, slow-paced, very John Carpenter-ish movie, and I'm looking forward to doing a Drinker's extra shots on it. So I will do a proper review of Escape from New York, because there's a lot I kind of want to say about it. Actually, I just don't ever want to think about Escape from LA. Heel versus Babyface. Hey man, I love this film with a passion, and you could only dream of. Arnie, I love you. We know you love Arnie, and I can't wait to talk about more of his films with you. Big Dave K says, Drinker, what are your thoughts on the new Dune film coming out, as well as the new Wes Anderson film, The French Dispatch? So I don't know much about The French Dispatch, but I'm cautiously optimistic about Dune, because I think Villeneuve is a good filmmaker. He did great work on Blade Runner 2049, and yeah, I'm hoping Dune is going to do the books justice, because we've never had it yet. Phantom Boomer says, I'm pretty sure that I'm caught up on your books. Are there any more on the way? Why, yes, sir. Yes, there is. There's one coming out next year. It's going to be called Dark Harvest, and we're just currently editing it right now, because it takes kind of a long time to edit a book. But yeah, next summer is apparently when it's coming out. And that's a standalone novel. Joey Bryant says, Drinker, any chance of reviewing the 1982 The Beastmaster? Whoa, that's a story for another day. Yeah, I remember watching, because was there not like 5 or 6 Beastmaster movies? Like, they eventually went straight to video. But I remember quite enjoying the early ones. Like, it's been a long, long time since I've seen them, but I remember them being pretty decent. Random Content Guy says, dare you watch The Flash Season 7? Nope. Fucking don't care about The Flash in the slightest. Wormy Spoon says, the Manchurian Conan to date. Christ, you had to work with that one. Like, Conan to date. Andre Jones, Valeria, do you know what horrors lie beyond those walls? Conan, no. Valeria, then you go first. That was a good line from her. I like that. Frozen in the 80s says, Hail Drinker, what are your thoughts on closing in on 1 million subscribers? I like it. And did you ever think you would become the voice of the people? I've seen other content creators review your videos. Oh, wow, cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't claim to speak for anyone. I just speak for myself, but it just seems like people agree with me a lot of the time. So it's a good feeling. It's a great thing, you know, to just voice your annoyance with things, or voice your opinions on something like YouTube, and just know that a lot of people are like, yes, you nailed it. I agree with you. Yeah, I would liken it to like being up on a stage or something like that. It's a strange experience, but it makes you feel good to know that you've hit the nail on the head sometimes. So yeah, hopefully I can keep doing it. Dantillion says, do you think now is the time to have a series featuring an old Arnold as king, remembering his high adventures, featuring his son as a young Conan, with Red Sonja, Elric, and the others of his time? I think that time is past, sadly. I don't really like the idea of like Conan being old and just reminiscing. I still want to see him do things, and that's goes back to my point earlier. I think if you'd made a third Conan movie 10 or 15 years ago, when Arnold was still old, but he was still like relatively fit and he could still do fight scenes, I think you might have got something really good. But like Andre was saying, I think the people that were interested back in the day in financing Conan movies had just moved on, and they weren't interested in fronting the cash for it, which is a shame. Chuck Grable says, I never gave any Arnie movies credit for being smart, only just for being kick-ass movies. I don't know if you're guest or you knew this. Ellie is gay. Yeah, Ellie's gay, by the way, in Last of Us 2. You'll never know because it's so subtle. Black Boots gave me 10 British pounds, so thank you, sir. Joy Bryant says, with the mention of the Lord of the Rings books, have you ever read Tad Williams' Memory, Sorrow and Thorn trilogy? If not, highly recommended. I haven't read them, no, but I'll take your recommendation, man. David Coots, another super chat because Andre is ridiculously knowledgeable about Conan, Robert E. Howard, etc. I salute you, sir. He fucking knows his stuff. Black Boots, what's your take on John Carter? The books were written around the same era as Conan, the movie rights bought by Disney to rival the Conan movies. Yeah, God, they were... The John Carter movie was not great, put it that way. I don't know much about the books, I'm afraid, so I couldn't tell you on them. But it felt like a wasted opportunity. David Knight says, hi Drinker, would you ever review Last of the Mohicans with someone into history, maybe Carl Benjamin? Looking forward to your Das book review, by the way. Yeah, I'd happily talk about it with Sargon. I love the movie. It's a fantastically filmed film. A filmed film. Should I say it's a great piece of cinematography, like the scenery and everything that they're traveling through in that film. It just looks gorgeous. Fight scenes are great. Characters are good. The performance from Daniel Day-Lewis is awesome. Yeah, I would definitely love to talk about that. Francisco Val gave me $2, so thanks, man. Mark Davies gave me £5, so thank you to you. Random Content Guy says, hello from a fellow Scotsman. I double dare you to watch season of The Flash if you dare. I'm not doing it, man. I'm not going to watch that shit. It's not worth it. Francisco Val, Korgoth of Barbarian needs to be brought up. I think we've had it, yeah. Jay Ho says, loved your review of Fight Club. I'm a huge CP fan. Favorite book was Choke, but so on the film, even though Sam Rockwell is amazing. Thoughts? Yeah, love Fight Club. I haven't seen Choke yet, so I couldn't tell you on that one. Paulus Plain says, the Critical Drinker, I love your accent. P.S. with love from Norway. Thank you, Paulus. Claptrappin says, have you or would you write a sci-fi book? And you also look like the Scottish Billy Butcher now. Brilliant. I need to grow my beard out a bit. Would I write a sci-fi book? Yeah, I would. It just, for me, something like that takes so much more work because you've got to construct an entire world instead of just setting it in the world that we live in, that people already kind of understand. You've got to make an entire fictional universe, and it would just need a lot of time and prep to get it right, and I just haven't had the time yet. Same with fantasy. Kevin O'Neill says, Drinker, thanks for the shout out to the animation quality of Masters of the Universe. It's a crying shame when the talents of quality artists are wasted on the ideas of untalented writers. Yeah, really is, because they really put the work in with that show, at least on the animation front, and it is a shame to see all that squandered. I think I'm almost there, actually. Decay79 says, what's your favorite movie? It's on the poster there. Big Trouble in Little China. Love it. Samuel John, could you do a video on the Beastmaster? Saw it countless times as a kid. I will do that now because people have brought it up. Leo Film says, 3 days of the Conan. Perfect. I think I made it to the end of the super chats, actually. I am quite aware that, like, when I do this, people have a tendency to send in more, like, right at the end, so I will try and finish up quickly. I just say thank you to everyone who's tuned in for this. It's been awesome. I love talking about this film. I really appreciate all the generosity of all the super chats, all the people who've been, like, awesome in chat. They've given us some great movie ideas for future Conan movies. And yeah, I hope all of you guys have enjoyed it tonight, like Andre and I talking about this. It's been great. And I can't wait for the next one. But for now, I'm going to finish up because it's quite late here. So I'm going to say that's all I've got for today. So I'm going to go away now.